Sean is here. We are a board of 8 tonight, and we're going to be getting ready to get started. We will start with the pledge, and we will get started. And we have lots of folks here tonight, which we are always happy to see. But we'll do the pledge, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Brad, if you will lead.
Sure. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, welcome everybody. We have been in exec session, but we're back, and we are ready to get started. And we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to get set with the public comment portion, but Ithaca High students, you all are going to go first, the board reps from Ithaca High, and so we'll go ahead and hear from you, and then we'll roll into the rest of the agenda.
Okay, so for some student council updates, class meetings are taking place on January 29th, and overall it's an opportunity for classes to meet and discuss upcoming events with the overall goal of increasing class unity. And the cafeteria manager of IHS, Jamie Taylor, recently met with student council to discuss the issue of the new lunch lines.
Winter Formal will be held February 10th at the Museum of the Earth. Also, Link Crew will be hosting a blood drive February 2nd. Anybody over the age of 16 is welcome to come to the blood. And Student Council is currently working on planning a spring prep rally.
And for sports, the ski team has some upcoming races.
Great, thanks guys. So we're going to go ahead and start with the public session portion. There will be a timer up. We have quite a few folks signed up to speak. According to the policy, you have 3 minutes. Don't feel you have to take all 3 minutes because 3 minutes can be a long time. But we're very happy to hear what you have to say. Sean, with his excellent eyesight, will be reading the names, and typically we're going to Sean will read 2 names, the name that's up, the next name, so you can get ready to speak. So Sean is going to manage that wonderfully, starting like right now.
I'm going to apologize in advance for any mispronunciations, so please understand that, and that's not my intent, because I know names are important, so I'm not intending to mispronounce anyone's name. First is Cynthia Henderson, and up next will be Sarah Chalmers.
The Christian Henry. Oh, Christian Henry.
My apologies. First is Christian Henry, and then is Professor Henderson.
Hi, so I'm Christian Henry. I'm a freshman musical theater major at ICA, and I went through the theater department here at Ithaca High School and through Boynton Middle School. And I want to say first that Bob Winans is not a racist. I am half black. I grew up with my father, one of 8 children. We have grown up below the poverty line. It wasn't until I got to 6th grade that Mr. Winans saw any kind of potential in me, because he saw that I loved music and I loved theater. And through him, he gave me the opportunity and the support to actually pursue it into the collegiate area of my life and onto a career. It wasn't until he sat down and said, Christian, you know you're talented. You know you have passion. You know that you can do whatever you put your mind to, that I felt like I could finally give myself the potential that I knew I had that no other teacher saw that I did. It wasn't until he believed in me that I believed in myself. And I know I'm not the only one that's done that. Joelle Payne, Huso Simone, Fatima So, Malama Sukoni, they all are prominent POC that grew up in the ICSD that have been supported onto their bigger, better lives with Bob Winans, with Nate Parker, with Kristen Zrisky. I think right now we're in an area where we're mad at everything. We're mad with the president, we're mad with the government, we're mad with the people who believe that POC are lesser, but we're at a time in our life where we have to separate our anger and with what's the problem. Right now, we're not doing that. I think it's easy to say Mr. Winans is a racist, and I think it's easy to just be mad at him and point him as the problem, when the problem doesn't start with him. The problem starts with there not being enough diversity and support for POC in the elementary, middle school, and high school areas. 35 of the 38 cast members in Hunchback of Notre Dame, they are in the choir. The choir at IHS is the most diverse of band, orchestra, and choir at Ithaca High School. When you grow up in ICSD, POC are not supported, so when it comes down to it, we are POC don't have as many financial resources or have the financial stability to continue and to study privately at the same level as the upper middle class white kids. So when you have that, plus the societal pressures to give up at every moment of your life to follow sports or to just survive in academics, there's no support to continue in music. And so, of course, POC are going to drop out at Boynton when they aren't striving at the same level as their white friends. Of course, when you get to high school, you're not going to continue. And when there needs to be more of an outreach to POC and support at the beginning of their academic career so that we can see broader diversity in the theater department. I appreciate that these students are advocating for there to become more racial diversity, but I think it is false to continue and pinpoint one person, because the problem doesn't start with one person. Social Justice Week at IHS, there was a photojournalist that proposed the question, where do students get their information? People said Facebook, Twitter, online. And he asked, at what point do you click the article and read the whole article? Many students said no. The reason we have so many problems is because people are asking what, but they aren't asking why. When you ask why enough, you get to the real problem. You get to ask, why was a white girl cast in part that's supposed to be POC? Why is there not enough racial diversity in the music and theater departments? Why are black kids raised in an education system that is classist and racist in the core of its institution? When you get to that point of asking why, are you actually able to solve the problem? I admire the fact that these letters were written. I admire the sentiment of what they're doing in the sense that they're trying to create change. But the change is much deeper and is much more rooted in the institution, and so that's when the problem becomes to the board. And so
3 minutes, my apologies.
Oh, that's good. So when it comes down to it, it's a problem in the root of the institution, not with one person. This person is the person that built me up to become the person, the advocate, the performer, and the artist that I am today. And I wouldn't be here, and many other students probably wouldn't be here without it. Thank you.
So my apologies if we cut folks off to 3 minutes. We're going to try to do our best to make sure there's 26 people who speak to make that happen, so please don't take offense to that. Also, if we can do our best to not name individuals, this is not a time for us to talk about individual employees, but rather talk whatever else you'd like to communicate to the board. I hope that makes sense as well, and we can try to make that. So up next, Cynthia Henderson, and then will be Sarah Chalmers.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for allowing me to speak at this meeting tonight. I will be as brief as I possibly can. My name is Cynthia Henderson. I'm a professor of acting at Ithaca College, an actor, a writer, a director, and the founder and director of Performing Arts for Social Change. I'm speaking tonight because I have been informed that my words in meetings and conversations are being adjusted to fit the agenda of others. So as you hear me tonight, I ask that you actually hear what I'm saying. I hold the adult decision makers accountable for this situation we found ourselves in again. It is our shared responsibility for the message and lessons we teach our children. I applaud and support our marginalized young people for the stand they are taking. Likewise, I care for and wish to help this become a true teaching moment for their more privileged peers. This can also be a teaching and learning opportunity for the adult decision makers. The tone-deaf casting practices in the ICSD and beyond is a solvable solution. I'm not just talking, I'm here to work with you. I have an international profile, am qualified and willing to step up and do the necessary work to facilitate an artistic workspace to get to the root of this issue. Both sides need to be willing to truly be in the room together. It will require work. The ICSD has tried to avoid doing the heavy lifting that is required to address and work through the situation of racially marginalizing students, and that has been in effect in this district for years. I'm not speaking of the bandage occasionally used as a way to pacify protesters. I'm speaking of facing yourselves, your privilege, and your culpability, and allowing the issues surrounding race and othering to fester and grow over the years. This situation has plagued studied this school district for at least as long as I've lived here and carefully watched over my son as he navigated his way through both Boynton and IHS. We can solve this, but we have to be open to the difficult and often painful work of being held accountable, not only to our children, but to ourselves. Why do I call this a solvable solution? Because I've seen unsolvable solutions. I've lain face first in the mud of a shallow ditch, praying that today I would not die, as soldiers and Boko Haram fighters fired upon one another on a road between townships on my way to conduct a social justice workshop in the country of Cameroon a few years ago. I've seen death and unsolvable situations. I facilitated workshops for villagers who come into the room ready to do the necessary work to get through the pain caused by the fighting, the loss of homes, the death of loved ones, and their own fears of dying. We are facing in Ithaca a situation that is serious. Our children are hurting. The issues go beyond ICSD, but it is solvable. Should the show shut down? Yes, but it needs to be the student's choice. I will not use my voice to force children. Likewise, I would never call already marginalized children into a room for a meeting without their parents, as happened a few days ago. Though an eager to help former IHS student, Christian, sat in my office owning his mistake, suggested this meeting, the adult decision makers in the room should have known better. There is no reason to give that would make that decision by the adults okay. There is no excuse for the racially tone-deaf casting practices that have caused nothing but pain and a sense of hopelessness in young artists. How can you know the beauty, the creativity, the talent that lives in your community if you only cast those you know and like? This goes beyond casting, but that is our focus at this time, so I will stay with this current situation. What I propose is a workshop akin to what I do in other countries and how I worked with the police officers, the mayor, the students, and concerned Ithacans on the project that became the play Trust. When I met with, and there's more, but I know I have a time limit. When I met with David Brown a few days ago, I shared with him that the students need to be able to express their experiences without fear of punitive actions. He agreed with me. Likewise, the students will need to be willing to hear from others with the same respect they are given as they share their experiences. The work will be artistic, and what all will discover will be profound and impactful. He also asked me if I'd be interested in being on a team to help create systems where underrepresented students feel welcomed at in ICSD. Since we are in the midst of doing this very work at Ithaca College, I'm happy to be on this team as long as he understands that I have no issues with speaking truth to power. He says he wants that on his team that he's trying to build. So, the workshop I've proposed is not a replacement for a show. I still think it would be an amazing show of solidarity if the students in the Hunchback musical decided to walk away from a show where the casting practices had such a harmful impact on their friends and peers. I maintain that that is their decision. The workshop is its own entity, designed to uncover and address the root of the practices so that they can be stopped via care and understanding, which is far more lasting, has a far more lasting effect than a checking off of a box to placate protesters. Once again, we are in the midst of an important moment. Unlike the fighting that erupted in the hallways of IHS, causing a lockdown of the school so many years ago, these young people want to take a more peaceful route, and I support them in those efforts. My question to the school district decision makers is this: will you actually support them so that we are not back here again in another 10 years?
Sarah Chalmers and then Wally Adams.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Sarah Chalmers, and I'm here to support the students who are standing up for equity in the Ithaca City School District. I'm a parent, a teacher, and a theater maker. With my husband, Godfrey Simmons, I help run Civic Ensemble, a theater company here in Ithaca. Godfrey is working a play tonight in Binghamton, or he would be here with us to speak as well. The young people here, standing up so passionately and eloquently, should be heard with sincerity. It might be hard to imagine what it would mean if we took their determined pleas seriously. While walking back what we've already said or done is messy and painful and confusing, imagine what it would mean to all the students if we made a commitment to end this cycle that Cynthia's talking about. What if we listened to them? Godfrey and I have a brown-skinned 6-year-old son. Like all parents, we teach our child what we think he needs to learn, but there's a big difference between what we teach our son and what our white neighbors teach their children. Parents of middle and upper class white children prepare those children to inherit the world. I know, I was so taught. But now, I'm the mother of a little brown boy, and we teach him that the world is his birthright, and that he will be discriminated against, and that he will be targeted for death. White children prepare to inherit the world. Black children prepare to be targeted for death. It's hard to hear, it's painful. I don't want it to be that way. I want to soften it. I want to teach him that thing that I was taught. That first thing. But the current reality doesn't bear that out. The world as it is now is not meant for my son or for these young people of color here. As white people, we're all at different stages of understanding what this means or even believing that it's true. Those of us who think our system is a meritocracy may be confused or angered by the suggestion that there's a double standard based on skin color. Now, my name's come up as someone who might get it, someone who may be able to help navigate these challenges, but here's the thing. I have done some work of dismantling my own racism, but I will never be finished. I will never stop learning, making mistakes, and growing from them. The process of racial identity development is a lifelong process. And until we white people take responsibility for ourselves, we will replay this school board meeting, the letters to the editor, the committee formations, and the incremental cosmetic changes over and over again. Year after year, decade after decade, we pass on the responsibility for the festering wound of racism to our children. Will these brown children be standing here in 20 years as parents fighting for their children to get the education they deserve? The process of dismantling white supremacy requires fierce love and patience, deep listening, and humility. This should be on the curriculum. The purpose of education is not for us to get jobs. It is for us to become ourselves, human in spite of the inhumanity of this system. The purpose of education should not be to prepare us for the world as it is, but prepare us to remake the world as we know it can be. These students are asking us for the latter. And I think we should learn together how to give it to them. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Wally Adams, and I'm here primarily to read 2 letters from IHS alum from 20 years ago. Yeah.
In 3 minutes, you will read 2 letters.
I shall,
please.
sir. I would also like to add that I'm the advocacy chair for the New York State Theater Education Association, and teaching theater to meet the federal and state standards, especially the new standards rollout as they come into alignment with the United States federal art standards. Technically, theater should be taught by a theater certified teacher or by the equivalent. This is from Essie Soga. I performed in school musicals every year at DeWitt and IHS. I went on to continue performing at musicals in college and graduate school. In all the shows I was in and at all the auditions I went to, it was clear that the people were committed to colorblind casting. What that meant was that though most of the shows were written to have all white cast, or at least that's what I assumed, the directors were open to casting non-white actors. But at IHS, things were different. It was clear that the creative team, led by Wally Adams and Todd Peterson, were committed to actively making the theater program a place for everyone. They went out of their way to make sure teens of color knew the theater department not only had a place for them, but was making a place for them. You didn't have to drum up the courage to walk into that environment. It was clear that the adults in charge wanted us there, wanted everyone to know how many stories there are to tell, what great art can be made. when you make it a point to really think about what you're doing rather than follow what's come before. I still, 20 years later, discuss our production of Oklahoma, how it turned our racial biases on their hands just by virtue of the casting. How, because everyone's dedicated to digging into the truth behind the art, it elevated the story that would have been simply old hat. I carry what I learned performing in IHS musicals with me every day. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the work we did changed people's lives. People love to say high school is the best years of your life. If this is true, then it's vital that the theater program take the time to make sure all children are represented, and that the means making an active choice to be inclusive, to lift up voices that aren't heard enough, to make space and to make time. How many minutes do I have left?
39 seconds.
Awesome! The other is very short. I'll just read 30 seconds of it. I hope that whatever happens next, the theater program can feel like a safe and nurturing place for all students. If it doesn't feel that way now, there's likely some work to be done. I walked away from theater when it started to feel unsafe. She was assaulted by a theater professor in college. That was a loss for me, a big one. I hope that IHS students won't feel the same loss that I have felt. Thank you.
Up next is Prachi, is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah.
And then Ella, MVC.
And we do want to just be aware of the 3 minutes, just to make sure everyone has a chance to speak, so feel free.
My name is Prachi Lena, and I have felt alone for so long. I'm the young Indian woman who wrote the letter which sparked a flame in so many. The letter that resulted in so many students and adults contacting me, telling me their stories. As I have said, I never wanted to be an activist, but I'm an activist now, because I have to take a stand, and take a stand now on behalf of all the people who have shared their stories with me. I was hoping, after my letter was embraced and heard by so many in our community, you would admit your mistake, learn from it, and do the right thing. City of Ithaca, please hear me. This is what has happened instead. Adult administrators threatened us all week. You plan to talk to all the students, many of color, who bravely signed the letter and bring them individually into a room so you could confront us. You say this was not going to be intimidation, but everyone knows the best way to stop a movement is by threats, isolation, and fear. What are you doing? In what world did that sound like a good idea? Thankfully, the student parents and network called you and it stopped. They stood up right then and they shut you down. Then, you met with me and several other students involved and Dr. Nieman. It was a bit intimidating as you did not invite our parents to stand by our sides, but we did it with the help of Dr. Nieman and our own developing voices. We did not waver. We told our truths to you. We stood up to you. Right there, looking power in the eye, speaking truth to power, we stood up. Finally, this past Friday, you sent an email to only the key kids of color involved. I repeat, only to the kids of color. You said you wanted to meet with us. In a panic, we contacted Dr. Nia, who flew from her job at IC to protect us from you. You wanted 3 brown and black children to hold our own in front of 2 white men in power and a black male school board member who had shown who would flip-flop depending on which side was winning. I'm 16, Maddie is 17, Amon is 14. What were you thinking? How dare you use scare tactics? We are your children finding our voices, and you used fear to try to silence us when what we needed was your support. I was shaking, terrified, until Dr. Nia ran into the room. She stood with us. In that moment, we overcame our fear, and we told you enough is enough. If you won't listen to us, we will shut you down. I stand before you now in front of all these people, the outspoken Indian young woman who sparked this movement, and I call upon you to stop this musical now. You tear our community apart if you don't. You do this, not us. I stand before my peers, wearing black, who came in support of this, and I say this to them. This is more than a play, and this is more than one school. Young people of color all over the country have a story to tell. We have stories to tell, and we are rightly afraid to tell them. But there is safety in numbers, so I ask you to go on social media and tell your stories and demand that things change. It's time to take a stand, and it's time to take a stand now. Please tell your story on social media. If you don't feel comfortable yet, please stand in solidarity with us. Let's make this hashtag Stand Now Go Viral. Let's tell our stories and take a stand. No more silence, no more waiting, stand now. Stop this musical, stop it now. My name is Prachi Lena, and I'm not alone.
Bellamy Van Cort. I am a senior at Ithaca High School. I am here because I believe that ICSD has been failing students of color for years and has been failing to educate children on issues of race for years. It is time for this to end. I've grown up surrounded by theater my whole life. I have witnessed how theater can change lives and tell stories. I see now how easy it is to make a space for everyone. I've seen how beauty can come from showcasing diverse actors and their diverse stories. ICSD could do this. It is choosing not to. We have given you opportunity after opportunity to acknowledge your mistakes and own up to the reality of your white-centered program that you've created. You have done nothing. Instead of accepting your mistakes and working for change, you try to scare us and shut us down. You offer us only hollow words and lip service. You use your powerful intimidation, and you use your power for intimidation, not education. Scare tactics, not support. On January 19th, you brought the only 3 students of color who are the leaders of this movement and not their white counterparts into a room alone. Why them? Did you think that you could intimidate them? Did you think having a black school board member there would lull them into a false sense of security? Do you really think we trust you? The 4 core values of IHS are compassion, ownership, tenacity, and integrity. How ironic is that? Your actions have not reflected a single one of these values that you drill into us on a daily basis. Over the last several weeks, we have realized that your only core value is cowardice. Prove to us that that is not true. Do this by stopping production of The Hunchback and starting a new musical. Do this by removing Robert Winans and hiring a socially conscious theater professional. Do this by stopping your bullying scare tactics. Do this by teaching about race and directly instructing white students on how to be true allies, standing by students of color, and interrupting practices of white supremacy. Finally, do this by teaching us that the word racism is not a word to be feared. We are all racist. How we choose to fight our own racism and how white people choose to use our white privilege to stop racist actions. That is what is important. Please don't misinform white children that we live in a colorblind world. Please don't tell them that only bad people are racist. That's how this entire problem started. And it's a dangerous and damaging falsehood. And to every white person who can hear me, I really want you to listen. Prachi just introduced a hashtag. Now I'm introducing one for allies. It's on us. Please join our movement and use this hashtag on every platform of social media you have access to. We need to stand in solidarity with these brave students of color. We need to show them that they are not alone. It's on us.
Maddie Carroll, and then after that, Ari Cummins.
My name is Maddie Carroll, and I'm a senior at Ithaca High School. I'm here because, as a black woman, I have gotten the short end of the stick my entire life. I thought the arts was going to be the one exception to this, and I was wrong. The actions of the Ithaca City School District and Robert Winans have made me feel more targeted than ever before. Many white people might not believe what I'm about to say, but I want to give context that the musicals are a symptom of a much larger problem the adults have refused to acknowledge or honestly address. I can't possibly tell all of them, but I will give you just 2 examples. When I was in the 7th grade, I was walking into school and there were 2 boys behind me. I never saw their faces, but they said very loudly, making sure I could hear, "You know why I hate Black History Month? Because niggers like her feel important." I cried in the bathroom alone for 2 hours, and that night I finally told my parents. We all went to the administration, and we were told that nothing could be done about it because I didn't know who they were. This was an opportunity to educate white children throughout the school on race. It was ignored. In terms of musicals, when I was in the 8th grade at 13 years old, I was cast in Cinderella as the fairy godmother. Once we started rehearsals, I was constantly told to act like Queen Latifah, to act sassy, to mimic a black stereotype. I am nothing like Queen Latifah. I'm not a black stereotype. I have been told that 20 kids of color have come forward and said that they had a good experience with Winans. Given the hundreds of students who have been through the theater program, this number should speak for itself. 20 kids? Really? That's your evidence? Yes, there are few children of color every year who Mr. Winans takes an interest in who were tokenized as an example of diversity. Of course they had a great experience, but we cannot all be those few children, and most of us were not. People ask me why I was scared to speak out earlier. These people are usually white and have never had the experience of being invisible and being ignored. They don't understand what it's like to fear white power structures. It is not the job of a 13-year-old girl to educate grown white men about their racism. Yes. Don't put this on me. The blame for this sits on the shoulders of adults who continually devalue students of color and cater to whiteness. Shut down Hunchback. Every day you wait, you hurt children. If you shut it down now, we have time to do a new musical that is truly inclusive for all children. Is your attachment to white power structures so deep that you would throw all of us under the bus just to save face? That's shameful. Especially when a hero in the theater community says he supports our movement, and when we approached him asking him to direct, he said yes. Joey Steenhagen will help us make this musical great. No more excuses. Kids of color, help us shut this down. Be brave, get involved, tell your stories like I do. Hashtag stand now. This is our moment for justice. Let's not let it pass us by. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Thank you.
Ari Cummins and then Amon.
My name is Alec Cummins. I'm a junior at Ithaca High School, and I've been failed by the Ithaca City School District. I was never educated about what's actually going on in the world when it comes to race. Most white kids aren't. We're raised thinking the world is an equal and fair place. White parents often think it's good for us to be raised that way. It's not. Kids need to be educated in and out of school on race. Children of all races will be running the country in the future. We all need to understand. I've known Prachi my whole life. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and I always thought we were treated the same. I realize now she never felt safe to tell me what's really happening to her. When her letter came out, I read it and I barely could move. It hit me that I was much more privileged than her, and I never even realized it. I always thought I knew what was going on in the world, but I never knew until that moment what was really going on. I was cast as a lead in Hunchback, and I came to a decision that I had to drop out of the show. I was put in a position by the adults running the show that I had to choose between something I love and doing the right thing. I have joined this movement. You know our demands, but I have two I want to stress. 1, stop the musical now. The longer you wait, the harder it will be to do a different musical. Everyone will suffer. This will be on you, not us. 2, stop your underhanded and immoral scare tactics. Maddie Carroll ran up to me this past Friday and told me 3 student leaders of our movement were told they had to go to a meeting without their parents. They were all kids of color. She felt she needed a white ally and someone there that they would be less likely to take advantage of. She felt that that student would need to be white. I went to the meeting, of course, and let me tell you, if Dr. Nia was not present, they would not take advantage of how scared my friends were and use their power to do so. This is outrageous. To every white student listening, it's on us to stand with our fellow students of color in this critical moment. Please join the movement. Stop this outrage. You heard the hashtag. Now, it's on us. Thank you.
My name is Amon Nunn Makepeace. I'm here because the ICSD administration is protecting and justifying racist actions. I have participated in ICSD theater for 3 years at Boynton Middle School under the leadership of Robert Winans. I am now a freshman at IHS. The examples I want to share with you influenced my decision to not audition for this year's musical. In 6th grade, I was cast in Mulan. The leads were all supposed to be Asian, Chinese specifically, but all the leads except me and one other young woman who is Dominican were white. None were Chinese. Was there any effort to recruit any Chinese students? While the messages throughout the show were beneficial for everyone, this was a show specifically about the story of a Chinese girl, and this was never acknowledged. In 7th grade, Mr. Winans chose The Lion King. This cast is very specific. The heroes of this story, which is set in Africa and shows the majesty of African royalty, were specifically written for black actors. Instead, most of the cast was white. None of the heroes, such as Mufasa and Simba, were played by black actors. There were only a few black kids in the cast. There was no effort to recruit more. This was one of the only opportunities in our middle school career to have any exposure to anything relevant to Africa, and we were all cast as the villains. One of the black students was cast as Scar, and I was cast as the leader of the hyenas with another black male student hyena who followed me. While in 8th grade, I received the lead role as Sir Harry in Once Upon a Mattress. It was hard to face the reality that outside my presence, the only other black male role model for my little brothers in the show was a mute king. I hope this helps you understand why I chose not to participate this year. Here's what I ask of you. Firstly, shut this down. Shut this musical down. It's gone too far. Your refusal to own up to this mistake is only feeding the fire. Secondly, I want to address something that hasn't been addressed yet. Adults have treated us like we're clueless children who don't know what we're talking about. We've watched grown-ups flip-flop all over the place, lie to us, and put us in unsafe, uncomfortable situations. Eldred Harris, you call yourself an ally of ours. We've witnessed you following whoever you think has the most power in the room. David Brown, we just met you. You told us, as students of color, that we could trust you. We shared our stories, our concerns, and our fears, relevant to Robert Winans, and you thought it was a good idea to try to force us to go face-to-face with him with none of our white allies or parents. The three of us, Prachi, Maddie, and I, were targeted as students of color. The adults in the room were two powerful white men, David Brown and Robert Winans. Eldred Harris was there too. Thankfully, my mother flew down from IC to protect us. This is insane. As someone who presents himself as an ally for us, Eldred Harris, you should have shut this idea down immediately. Instead, you participated. This is why ICSD needs to obtain allies that do not cater only to whiteness. We need people who will stand strong with us and not waver. I also hope more kids of color will stand up and tell their stories. I hope more white kids will take responsibility for educating themselves, even if our leaders refuse. We need to shut this musical down. We need to interrupt racism in this district. Stand now. And for those of you who continue to cater only to whiteness, know this. We see you. You cannot intimidate us. Your time is up.
Next is Lucian, MVC. Did I pronounce that correctly? Lucian.
Hi, my name is Lucia Van Cort, and I was not going to speak tonight, but after reading a letter to the editor of the Cummins Weekly, I felt I had to. The letter was written by a parent in support of Mr. Winans. I want to start by saying that I worked with Mr. Winans, and I found him to be very supportive of many students, including me. I thank him for this, but he is not supportive of all the students. He does not make an effort to connect with students who are outside of a very specific circle. Most importantly, the kids who connected with him the best were often the kids whose parents spent a lot of time and effort helping with the productions. It's normal to like people who help you. Sorry. I want to be nice to people who help me and think the best of them and return the favor by helping them. But in the musicals, this ended up as Mr. Winans helping the kids whose parents had lots of time and resources. Yes, there are expectations to this, but people talk about them because they were expectations, not the norm. The mother who wrote the letter is someone I know, and I like her and her daughter very much. Just like her daughter, I know I am somebody who has a lot of advantages just because of who my parents are and what background I have. Even though my sister and my mother work for social justice and talk to me about these issues a lot, sometimes it's hard for me to see those advantages. sometimes it just feels frustrating when other people are struggling and they talk about it. It feels like they're just complaining. I mean, like, if I was doing okay, shouldn't they? But if I think what's really important here is that we all need to examine, as my sister would say, the circumstances of our success. Yes, we might be talented, but there may be other talented, equally talented people who are not getting fair shots just because they're excluded or don't even try because they feel it's hopeless, like they can't do anything. Like my hero Todd Peterson said, why would you audition as a person of color if the evidence shows that you only like white people? Like, the fact that the woman who wrote a letter is support of students who have had every advantage, is the mother of a student who had every advantage, is not a coincidence. It's hard to see the big picture sometimes, but I hope all parents at ICSD do that before jumping in defensive and uniform conclusions about a system that is built for them and benefits their children. As white people, no matter how much we don't mean to hurt others, no matter how much we like to think that we are enlightened, we need to understand that the system helps us. But at the same time, it's hurting others. My sister said to me the other day, when you're used to superiority, when you are used to superiority, equality feels like oppression. White people, we may have to give up some things, but it's time for some real equality. It's on us. Thank you.
Up next is Nieman.
Go, Mama. Time is, so I'm going to read. Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Nieman. I wear many head wraps in this community. Ithaca College, professor in education, board of directors, president at Southside Community Center, and executive director of CAMAPA Performing Arts Program in the summer. With my work, I have the glorious responsibility of preparing teachers, especially music teachers. Most importantly in this conversation, most importantly in this conversation, I am a mother. I'm a single mother of 3 children in the ICSD. I also graduated from IHS in 1999. My freshman year, I had the incredible pleasure of participating in the epic performance, The Wiz. Most notably, where Todd Peterson and Wally Adams made sure that we knew the stage belonged to us as well. My oldest son, Amon, has been a part of theater for several years. Now a freshman and far more talented in theater than I, he's been discouraged from participating. I have significant concerns about the administrative response to these children, to my babies. And so while I only pushed out one of them, they are all my babies. These are our babies. But the responses have not felt anything like love. Not at all. I don't have enough time to explain all the details around that, but I'll write you. And then I'll say that with this All Lives Matter, this All Lives Matter casting, somehow white lives maintain superiority. Continuing this show will not only communicate to our babies of color that they are dispensable, but continuing this show will drastically miseducate our white babies too. These students have united and developed an actual plan. David Brown already offered to do the research on the production rights and process for a new show. And he also, I'll add, mentioned that funding would not be an issue. All of the demands can serve as agenda items for the district's future committee. I was invited to be on this committee, the team that I believe Cynthia was talking about. And while I have absolutely no time to serve in that capacity, and I question the intentions, I do have specific suggestions for how to bring their demands to life. Particularly number 7, the demand about giving kids access. And number 3, the demand for hiring socially conscious teachers and administrators. I also gave David Brown and others the teacher education dispositions that we work with at Ithaca College. And I know that there are folks in the district, teachers, administrators, who are reading Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. And it talks very directly about listening to students and acknowledging the social political context. The healing cannot begin until the show is stopped and the director is replaced. The students who have united have developed an actual plan for an authentically inclusive show with a theater trained, experienced, and well-respected director from this community, Joey. A plan that involves healing and transformation and can begin to expand throughout the curriculum. My hope is that stakeholders and gatekeepers, particularly board members, will take a stand with the students who have united. That's it.
Again, my apologies to Scalia. Is that correct?
Saskia.
Saskia, my apologies.
I'm Saskia Van Nauhuys. I'm a professor of ecology, and my daughter is Prachi Lena, who wrote one of her letters. I'm proud of these high school students for their strength and persistence in calling out the lack of inclusion and racial bias in casting in performing arts in the school district. This issue has been around for many years. I give them my full support and urge the school board to take them and their demands seriously. As a mother, I'm especially proud of Prachi for telling her story, which is one version of a story that needs to be heard by the adults in the school district in order for them to serve the kids better. I have 2 daughters that have been through ICSD, or going through it, a brown one and a white one. I've observed over the years the subtle and sometimes not subtle differences in how they experience everyday life, which is partly due to how other people treat them because of the way that they look. While I generally feel that Prachi is lucky to be growing up in Ithaca, I still see the weight that she bears daily because she's brown. Because she's a child, a lot of her daily life is spent at school. Her identity is being formed partly based on how adults she encounters at school, all of whom are in positions of trust, treat her. I would like the school board to note that in addition to bias casting related to color, ICSD Performing Arts also comes up short by engaging in racial stereotyping and inaccessibility to students who may have interest in talent but are inexperienced or don't have parents able to help them with logistics. An outcome of this is a great theater experience for a limited number of kids, many of them privileged, which should not be the goal of any public school program. Prachi knows a problem when she sees it, and she is brave, but she's not one to seek out conflict. The tone and the intensity of the response by the administration and performing arts staff over the last couple of weeks is well beyond anything she has ever experienced. Even with the unwavering support of other kids and some adults in the theater community, it's entirely overwhelming to her. This leaves me feeling like I have to remind people who are education professionals to take into account that the students involved are children. They're children grappling with complex and adult issues of privilege and race. At the same time, they're facing the challenge of confronting adults who have authority over them about an issue that the adults feel deeply about and respond to with emotion and sometimes defensively. On top of that, the kids are also negotiating conflict and reckoning among other students in the performing arts and outside of it. I am overwhelmed by how important this learning experience can be for the students. Not just the student activists, but any student who is engaged in this process, and for the adults at the school. I'm also hopeful that an outcome will be mostly positive. I don't want this issue to be pushed under the rug as it has been multiple times in the past.
Alec O. Poor attempt to pronounce the last name. And then up next will be Barbara Regenspan.
Good evening. My name is Alec Osinski. I am an IHS alum, class of 1991. I participated in shows at both Boynton Middle School and Ithaca High School. Veteran of the United States Army, a medical professional in Ithaca. I'm also a member of the theater community here. I'm reading this letter. It's written by Eliza Van Cort, who's out of town on business. So sorry. My name is Eliza Van Cort. I'm a theater professional for over 25 years who founded the Actors Workshop of Ithaca. I stand in solidarity today with this movement and my daughter Annabella, and her fellow student leaders who are speaking their truths. To begin with, I want to dispel the blatant falsehood perpetuated by the Ithaca City School District that the racism in their performing arts program is new information. This is patently false. I and so many other diverse parents and activists have been raising our voices for years against the whitewashing practices of the ICSD. Whitewashing, which is seen by most artists as more palatable, but just as damaging as the theatrical casting practice that birthed it, minstrelsy. For those of you who don't know, minstrelsy involved white actors being put in blackface and telling the stories of black people through offensive racial stereotypes. Minstrelsy is now relegated to theatrical Hall of Shame, and unfortunately whitewashing, an equally insidious practice, is alive and well. For my part, I've had meetings with Mr. Brown, Principal Knight, Eldred Harris, and Dr. Brown. I've written letters. I've called. To speak to the most recent example of whitewashing, we have the current casting of a young white woman in a role of an oppressed brown woman in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Despite her formidable talents, which could have shined in another role for all to see without controversy, this is not her story to tell. My heart breaks that she must suffer alongside of her peers of color because the choices adults thoughtlessly made. For the record, I wrote an email to Mr. Winans and Mr. Rinsky at CC Dr. Brown the day the show was announced. I told them as a theatrical professional, I knew of their choice. I knew the part of Esmeralda was written for a brown actor, and I was hopeful they would do the right thing. Yet they went with a divisive casting choice, which has caused so much unnecessary heartbreak. To the brave young people speaking out on this issue, I say this. You are speaking truth to power despite the unsettling and underhanded scare tactics of the adults who have chosen optics over truth, fear over your well-being, politicking over real change. The adults have tried to make change for years. You are succeeding where we failed. I thank you and I humbly ask for your forgiveness. I wish we had succeeded. I wish that I had worked harder. I'm sorry. And I thank you for your bravery and fierce commitment to fighting for those with so much power. To those in power, I say this: enough is enough. Enough evasion and misinformation. Enough using Trumpian tactics to draw focus from the real issue. You can change this. Shut down the musical. Shut it down now or bear the full responsibility of so much more hurt, so much more division. It's time for unity. It's time for a new beginning. Finally, to my fellow theatrical professionals and socially conscious parents, let's continue rallying behind these young, fierce voices. We know mindful casting and shows that tell the stories of all our children is possible. Let's fight for a show that unifies our young people and celebrates the beautiful diversity of the community we love. And until this happens, let us never stop supporting these young activists. Never. It's on us.
Barbara Regenspan, and then is Laura Branca.
Hi, I'm not going to use my time establishing my credentials, except to say I've been a social justice focused teacher educator for 40 years. I just retired from Colgate. I directed the doctoral program in educational theory and practice at Binghamton, and I'll leave it at that. We have 2 kids who graduated from LACS. They're wonderful kids. They did get a good education around race and privilege, by the way. But but here's what I want to say. I guess I just want to add the things that haven't exactly been said yet. Okay, so the truth, colorblindness is almost always an excuse for white domination to thrive. But the most disturbing thing to me about everything so eloquently reported by the students and the parents and the community members here is that there isn't any excuse for educationally privileged people in Ithaca not to know that truth. It's the subtext of probably at least 100 courses offered right now at Ithaca College and Cornell, and it's backed up by regular, and I mean more than one a week, open to the public talks on the campuses. I mean, it's not a mysterious thing, you know, it's not, it's, there just isn't an excuse for not knowing it. So this casting decision, on top of everything else that has been so eloquently reported, especially by the students, but also all of their marvelous allies in the community, and I can't thank you enough. And by the way, Surge Ithaca, Show Up for Racial Justice, is supporting my comments, and I'm speaking. I've been allowed to speak for Surge also. I just want to say that so the casting decision is actually shameful for Ithaca, on top of everything else. Hunchback is experiencing a wildly popular revival nationally and internationally precisely because of the current convergence of social forces. Black Lives Matters, the Me Too and related movement around the newest lack of tolerance for sexual assault. The coverage by the New York Times of the fact of high numbers of young people joining DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. I mean, there's just a wave, and that's what Hunchback is riding on. So the casting decision is really sort of so backwaterish on top of everything else. Okay, the fact that the directors of performing arts at Ithaca High can afford to think that none of these social issues have anything to do with this musical's casting has to do with this peculiar way that social segregations play out in Ithaca. Unfortunately, it means that people can be protected from their lack of social awareness for way too long because they can always find a chorus of yes men to back them up. And in this kind of an insulated space, you can dismiss the voices of community jewels like Dr. Nieman Makepeace and Sarah and Godfrey Simmons and Todd Peterson. But I actually think your time is up. The students have been too well educated, and it's time for them to quite literally run the show.
Laura Bronca, then up next is Catherine Thrasher Carroll.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm going to read a letter that will be sent to the editors of local news media. As active members of the Community Leaders of Color, otherwise known as CLOC, we write in solidarity and steadfast support for the high school students who wrote letters of concern and protest published in Tompkins Weekly, and who continue to speak strongly and clearly about the racial bias that apparently exists within the performing arts program at Ithaca High School. To the students, we want to clearly express that we are listening, we hear you, and we stand with you. To the Ithaca City School District Administration and members of the school board, we sincerely hope that you will take the expectations and recommendations of the students seriously. We expect that you will take the necessary actions to review their stated concerns about the performing arts program. We encourage you to seek assistance in determining how to eliminate the racial bias and create a fair, inclusive, and equitable process before more students are hurt and discouraged from participating. Sincerely, Community Leaders of Color. This is signed by Marcia Baum, Pastor Ronald Benson, Laura Branca, myself, Phoebe Brown, Audrey J. Cooper, Kirby Edmonds, Carl Graham, Jabron Haygood, Leslie McBean Claiborne, Davi Mosey, Shelley Nunn, Reverend Nathaniel Wright, and Karen Yearwood.
Catherine Thrasher Carroll, and then up next is Beverly Schmidt.
Hello, I'm Catherine Thrasher Carroll. I am and have been a mental health professional for 35 years, and I am the mother of Maddie Carroll, and my other daughter, April Carroll, went through the ICSD school district as well. I am here today in support of these students who seem to understand unconscious bias and internalized racism better than many of the adults in our school district. Black and brown children have been and are continuing to be hurt by being denied equal access and opportunity to play lead roles and roles that are actually written for people of color and for people from other marginalized identities. This invalidates or erases the intrinsic value that these students are trying to develop as they mature into adults. Unconscious bias is definitely at play in all of us, in our city, and here in our schools. It can't be. An example that's not actually even related to the theater program, but Maddie was asked in a history class to, in a debate, support the role, and she was told she had to, play the role of pro-slavery. And when I talked to the teacher, he didn't understand why that would be wrong. Now, would any of us insist that a Jewish student play the role of pro-Hitler or concentration camps? No, because we all know it's wrong. But we don't get it when it comes to black and brown people for some reason. You know, I don't know why. Okay, but I know why. Because we've all been socialized in the same way. And we all have pockets of privilege, and we all have pockets of oppression. And some of us have more privilege, and some of us have more experiences of oppression. And this is exactly what these students are trying to point out and help their teachers and administrators and other adults here in our community understand, if you don't already understand it. I know many do, but many also do not. And so, you know, if you think about anyone who's over the age of 30, if you think about the first kind of TV shows you watched or movies you watched, we're all socialized to believe expendable black man. Right? First one to die, if someone's going to die. Or thug, bank robber, or, you know, murderer. Black men are scary. We have all internalized that. And unless we actually take a look at how that, you know, how we that's there, then we can't actually dismantle that. And so when these young people are auditioning for roles, it's natural and normal that unless the person who's casting has explored their own internal racism and bias, that they're going to automatically go to the one that resonates. Okay? So I support these students. I support all of you in really beginning to grasp these concepts that they're so well articulating and that I'm trying to articulate as well. Thank you.
Beverly Schmidt and then James Schultz. You're perfectly fine. You're good.
Hi, I'm Bev Schmidt, a retired ICSD music educator, and I must say I agree with a lot of the voices I heard tonight. There is work to be done, and we need to get together and do that. I've been involved in Ithaca's musical since 1996, usually as a rehearsal pianist. Over the years, I've worked with approximately 10 musical directors, many in this room, and know that each one of them has strived to present the best show possible. I played the piano for the Hunchback auditions, and thus heard every student who auditioned. From the pool of applicants, I believe that the audition process was fair, and I firmly believe that the cast choices were based on the students' singing, acting, and dancing skills. Again, I agree that more work has to be done to include everyone into the arts, but from this pool of applicants this year, auditionees, this is what I saw. I truly believe the casting and ensemble decisions were made with the aim of presenting the best production possible.
James Schultz and then Mike Ellis.
Hey, I'm James Schultz, been an activist in Ithaca for a pretty long time. I am an activist through videography recently. I'm going to be reading a letter from an alumni talking about their response to the letters of Prachi Lena and the rest of that book. Okay. To the Ithaca City School Board. Upon reading the Tompkins Weekly article regarding the work of Prachi Lena, Amon Nunn Makepeace, and Annabella Meade Van Cort, I knew immediately that I had to add my voice to theirs. I have written several letters and deleted them all, because I honestly cannot find the words to express how significant and incredible I believe to be the work of these students and their supportive adults. The conversation of racial representation and inclusion at Ithaca High School, Ithaca City School District, and Ithaca at large is a battle that must be fought. I was born and raised in Ithaca, and while it is a diverse town, it is far from inclusive. I grew up with friends of every race, ethnicity, creed, sexuality, etc. But I cannot remember a single teacher in all 13 years of my schooling who wasn't white. Not one. That dynamic of a diverse population under almost total white leadership is reflected through the city and its infrastructure. It is long past time for change. Change, however, does not happen by accident. Change is intentional and hard-won, and most certainly not colorblind. The practice of colorblind casting is a false practice. Such a practice assumes that institutionalized racism and implicit bias do not exist, but they do exist. The only way to combat such internalized and implicit discrimination is to actively and purposefully fight against it. Sterling K. Brown, winner of Best Actor in Drama Series at this year's Golden Globes, said in his acceptance speech, "Throughout the majority of my career, I have benefited from colorblind casting, which means you know what. Hey, let's throw a brother in this role, right? Yeah. It's always really cool, but you wrote a role for a black man that could only be played by a black man. And so what I appreciate so much about this thing is that I am being seen for who I am and being appreciated for who I am. And that makes it that much more difficult to dismiss me or dismiss anyone who looks like me. Colorblind casting may add demographic diversity to a cast, but the only way to bring meaningful equality and inclusion to a production is through conscious casting. Students of color should have protected access to roles that allow them to honor their identity and express their experience in meaningful ways. IHS has seen much meaningful inclusion in musical productions before. I was lucky to participate in musicals under the direction of Todd Pearson and Wally Adams. Todd and Holly championed progressive play selections, intentional recruitment and casting, and an atmosphere of inclusion. When in high school, I never thought of the plays and the cast as anything significant, but as an adult, I see now how extraordinary that experience was. But it shouldn't be extraordinary. It should not be the default. It should be the default. Please actively and purposefully fight to make it so. Sincerely, Rachel A. Edwards, me, Marigioni. Ithaca High School class of 1999.
Mike Ellis and Dawn Hersini. Not sure I pronounced that properly again. Dion.
Hello, everybody. I didn't write anything down because I wasn't sure if I was going to speak tonight, but I need to speak. I'm the father of the child who was cast as Esmeralda, and I know the script that white privilege says I'm supposed to follow right now, which is defend my daughter's talent, beg you to keep the show, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what you're going to hear. As much as I love my daughter and was so excited about this opportunity for her, my daughter does not want to be the face of whitewashing. The adults could have known and could have stopped this a long time ago. And I'm here tonight really hold you all accountable, because this has not only caused conflict within my own family, it's caused conflict between students and their friends. It's caused conflict within students who love theater and have worked their behinds off to get where they are in theater and now feel conflicted about the one and only musical that they have a chance to do through IHS so far this year. Nothing else has been proposed on the table, which I wish that would come out if that's actually a conversation that's happening. To be forced to make that choice as a student who is trying to study for midterms right now, who's trying to get sleep, who's trying to balance anybody who's in theater, you know how demanding that is. You're not just you have to be a good singer, you have to also dance, and you have to also memorize lines, and a lot of hours have already been put into this show. And love it or hate it, that's the reality. Those are hours that the kids who are in the cast right now can't get back. The fact that the adults did not step in when there was a moment to, and I'm talking about years ago, to really address this problem at its roots and make sure that we wouldn't be sitting here in the situation today where we're pitting friend against friend and child against parent and community member against community member. And then backing off and not giving the community anything to go on about what the heck is going on behind the scenes and isolating students of color. What the hell? The students honored me by calling me and saying, this is going on. I can't believe it's going on. I can't believe that they're trying to get students of color by themselves in a room with white power holders to talk about this. We don't know what's going on, but this feels very scary to us. Can you do something about it? And I believe that my responsibility as a white person of privilege is to use that responsibly and try to do what I can to influence. So I'm asking you, I'm begging you, like these kids deserve to be kids. They're amazingly powerful leaders, and they're showing all of us that. They're showing us what courage means. They're showing us what dignity means. It's time for the adults in the Ithaca City School District to step up. Let us know what's going on behind the scenes. If the directors have been moved at all or touched by this experience and they're changing and growing and ready to do stuff, let us know about that. Let's not worry about what the union might think or what the lawyers might think. Let the truth come out. How else are we going to heal? How do we move towards healing? If we just go down this path of conflict, there's only one way that this can end. Is the students, if the show goes on, the students in the show will feel terrible about it, they'll be conflicted about it. Whoever's sitting in the audience is going to sit there wondering, am I racist for watching this show? Am I racist for enjoying my son or daughter putting on the performance of their lives? There's only one way that this can end if there's no attempt to try to heal the situation and show that there's some growing and learning happening behind the scenes. Stop trying to protect that from coming out. We need to know the community obviously is watching. So throw us a bone. Let us know what's happening so we can start to see if there's any chance for hope. Is there any chance that this is going to work out in a good way, or are we just sort of going to kind of gear up for the inevitable, incredible pain that it's going to cause across the community if we get to April and there's no change and this show happens and people are picketing and boycotting and more articles and more radio spots and everything that the students have to do because they feel their voices are not being heard. Let us know that the voices are being heard. that would mean that maybe they could tonight study for the midterms and now think about what do I have to do next to get my voice heard.
So this has been very interesting to me. My name's Dion Hersini. I maybe shouldn't be here right now, and the reason is my daughter is her first year at Boynton. She had been to Montessori school, and this was her first year going into 7th grade there. She had a great experience in theater. There's a lot of points to put out and not to discount. I've learned a lot tonight, by the way, not to discount anything that anyone else has brought to the table. But she's half Persian, and they did The Sound of Music. She's got a pretty solid background in theater, because that's always been her passion. She's, since like very, very small, gone to theater camps, acting camps. That's her choice. She wants to do that. So I'm just kind of like wanting to bring more anecdotal information to what you guys are all listening to. Just like more information, not like really information to try to discount what someone else is saying. But so my experience, as limited as it has been, was a very good one. She was, super happy to have been cast in that role. And when all of this started coming up in the community, because I was just hearing about it on the periphery, I'm like, well, The Sound of Music, there are actual Nazis in that show. The children, she was cast as a child, so she was not, light-skinned, blonde hair. She had another classmate who's Asian that was cast as one of the children in, what is basically a very white role for kids, traditionally looking at the show. So just from my limited experience with Mr. Winans, I saw that as being a good thing. Like, you're actually taking kind of white roles and putting kids of different ethnic backgrounds in those roles. So I just wanted to bring that to the table. And I'm an attorney, so my background is sometimes like I'll always try to look at things, and there's so much listening right now, or in what I was hearing right now, that echoes a lot of affirmative action, for, against. These are the reasons why affirmative action is great. These are why other people will say no, it shouldn't be so much so. So like if you're looking at a part that you're going, what's the most important characteristic of this role? Is that the fact that the character is, of color, or the gender? Is that the most important part of this character? Or are there other characteristics of this character that you want to highlight? And so, in some ways, even though there are different ways of looking at it, and in arts, I also have an art history background, everything is very subjective. So I guess what I'm saying is that other people casting these roles could have, looked at it very differently, and that doesn't necessarily mean that someone else who was seeing it differently is doing that because they're racist or because they, sometimes it's out of ignorance, but other times it can be, artistically, this is how I'm seeing this. And a lot of other parents on email threads that I have read who do have a longer background with Mr. Winans than I do. Like I've said, I've just been here a semester in the school district. They are saying more like, the character, the traditional character it didn't say that the character had to be of color. The most important aspect of this character was not that it was a person of color, but that when Disney did the show, they made it a person of color. So there's a lot of those things going on that I just kind of wanted to bring up. Not saying one way of looking at it's right or the other way of looking at it's right. So those are just my comments.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ross Harstad, and then James Woodridge. You know who you are.
My name is Ross Harstad. I'm a theater maker in Ithaca and been here for 4 decades. Love the city and hate racism in it. What I want to say is, one, in terms of protecting any particular individual, as a white male, I would hope to be held accountable anytime I have a racist action or a sexist action. That is a gift to me. Now, I think the problem is when we say things like the best for the production. We're not even talking about what is the High School Musical about or for. What is the pedagogical reasons behind the theater program in a public school? We do not need the people who have the most already taking the parts because they can sing better because they have had lessons for like 5 years. I mean, I read that all the time. I love the musicals I've seen at IHS, I will add. But I will bet if you could go back through many years of yearbook photos and count the number of people of color in each of those casts, you would find it does not look like this. Why not have this be the reality we put on our stages? There is a big argument happening in professional theater now around both gender and diversity. It is the exact same argument that is being brought to you today. This is our future. These young people are our future. They are going to inherit this planet. Theater is a place to imagine community and build community. Theater is where we see ourselves most immediately. Let us change this now. So many of you in this room and on this board spent years and years, especially the parents of color, but your allies, to try to get a real equity goal into the school district. This is under equity goal. Yes. And let us not forget that extracurricular activities are what all these students are waiting now on their college applications are using to say, I do things. Well, who gets to say that and who doesn't? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, my name is James Woodridge, as some of you know me as Buddy in the community, and I direct the DeWitt musicals, and it's an honor to be here, so thank you for having me. I don't think we teachers learn until somebody throws us something right in our face and really says, you know what, think about this. And so when I read your letter, and I looked back when we did 13, and I looked back at all the various things that went into play, the social dynamics, everything. Prachi and everyone, I think we adults can do better. We directors can do better. I briefly spoke yesterday at our Fine Arts Booster meeting. I hope you don't mind that I did ask my current students, how do we recruit and support children of color and other minorities into plays, musicals, and talent shows? But I also started interviewing people at Nikki Green, the new vegan restaurant. It's a good place. CrossFit Palace, another good place to work out. And also North Star. Maybe thinking, why? I need information this has been the best professional development I think I've had in this district. When I went through all of the students' responses, some things kind of became apparent. These are 7th and 6th grade students, and I told David Brown that I would email him all these things. Leveling the playing field seemed to be a predominant thing that the students are saying. These are young students. Choosing the show, I had many students offering up ideas for shows. You know, it's nice to be humbled every now and again, because I think that dissidence allows one to grow a little bit. Spreading the word and communicating to various constituents in our community and supporting people. Now remember, these are children. Incentives, maybe they can get a prize or extra credit. It wasn't until one fantastic woman wrote this comment that made me think, wow, you know, I think I can do better. She said, there was no makeup that matched my skin tone.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, wow, she's absolutely right. You're gonna call me crazy to say this. I absolutely support the students in here, and I do pray and hope in my own ideology and what I believe in. I hope that all the adults who have been affected by this are truly internalizing and looking inward. I think we're all part of the problem. And if we all met together and had come to my place, we're neighbors, we come to one of our homes, have tea or something. There's no quick fix, there's no easy fix, it's sloppy, it's messy, it's called democracy, and you are participating in this thing called democracy. So students, when I see you at the gym, when I see you on the court, on basketball courts, when I see you at various places, struggling, we are. As a white man, I can tell you, I struggle with this every day. I used to call out professors at my institution where I went to school on 120th Street. I found them all to be a bunch of hypocrites, but then I thought, well, maybe I'm a hypocrite as well, and I need to change and try to adapt. I thank you for this crazy opportunity. As an introvert, I sat there reading the articles, I printed them out, I color-coded them. I fact-checked some of them based on my own perceptions. Yeah, I'm a little OCD and left brain obsessive compulsive, but that's who I am. I want support from the board. When I choose my musicals and I want to try to recruit people, I want to be able to partner up with other people to say, you know what, have you thought about it through this lens? I'm only one person. I can go into the cafeteria and have conversations. I can call parents and have many text messages back and forth. I would love your support as well in choosing a show. You know, I had already inside of my mind thought of a show for next year. Not anymore. So I'm already starting to rethink. And it's not a bad thing, it's reality. So I thank you for your time, and that's all I have to say.
Oh, yeah, on me. Joey Steenhagen, and Liz Hess is next.
Good evening. Before I read a letter that I've been asked to read on behalf of an Ithaca High School alum, I just want to say on my own behalf that I'm very proud to stand behind the students, all the students in our community, and I'm humbled to serve them in any way that I possibly can. Dear esteemed members of the ICSD School Board, I am a 1999 graduate of Ithaca High School, and I'm writing to support the students who have so eloquently raised their voices demanding more conscious casting choices in the Ithaca High School musicals. Though I now live in Colorado, social media has afforded me the opportunity to follow along as these impressive young men and women initiate a necessary dialogue about inclusion, privilege, racial bias, and cultural appropriation. Topics which many adults twice their age are only just beginning to understand. To paraphrase Dr. Nieman's statement at the Tompkins Weekly article published on January 22nd, there is certainly a level of education on these topics that many white people have not had a lot of experience with, and that is precisely why these casting choices are so incredibly important. I participated in the high school musicals 3 out of my 4 years of high school. Sophomore year, I played the role of Ms. Bell in Fame. Junior year, I played the role of Laurie in Oklahoma, and senior year, I played the role of Cinderella in Into the Woods. Each show was directed by Wally Adams and Todd Peterson, who together crafted an incredibly inclusive and positive experience for the students who participated. Their choices were deliberate and profound, from actively recruiting students of color to audition, to purposefully casting cross-culturally. As a member of 3 incredibly diverse casts of students, I had the opportunity to develop close friendships with people I might not have otherwise talked to, many of whom I'm still in contact today. At the time, I only had limited understanding of the impact these shows had on me and my peers, but as an adult, I can say without hesitation that my experience in the cast of the high school musicals laid the foundation for the way I have approached my life as a woman who is dedicated to positive social change. As a white girl with blonde hair who spent her early childhood in the small farm town of Candor, New York, I was a pretty conventional choice for the role of Laurie in Oklahoma. But Holly and Todd made the decision to cast an African-American student, Justin Stewart, as Laurie's love interest, Curly. The role of Judd, the delusional farmhand who's obsessed with Laurie, was played by a white student, Dan White. Exploring the themes of love, safety, and social class within the context of a multicultural cast gave new depth to the show's message. In rehearsals, we had many conversations about the role racial bias played in the storyline. The cast grew closer as we learned to have tough conversations. Holly and Todd's casting choices were intentional. They were not an afterthought, nor were they conciliatory actions meant to appease a group of people. Casting was a decision that was thoughtfully handled and its implications carefully explored, giving us students the opportunity to examine how race impacts our own thoughts, experiences, and interactions. We were given the opportunity to learn about life on stage in a safe setting. I know for a fact that those lessons had a ripple effect. The first time my parents sat in on a rehearsal, they were surprised. "Curly's black," my mom said. Both shocked and impressed. "Yep, he is, Mom," I replied. The show sparked a dialogue in my white family that we might not otherwise have had. Let me be clear, conscious casting is not just for the benefit of students of color. Conscious casting is necessary for white kids too. Having the opportunity to work intimately with people who are different than us gives us the tools needed to understand the world. It gives us the opportunity to see beyond the bubble of personal experience and engage in dialogue that broadens our perspectives. Indeed, there are many grown adults who have not yet been exposed to the concepts of bias, privilege, and appropriation. But talking about these concepts in a safe, inclusive space with trusted peers and mentors is perhaps the best opportunity for the next generation of decision makers, artists, parents, and citizens to learn. Thank you on behalf of Sarah Lynn Ward Chillick, classmate.
Ms. Hess.
I just want to say I have the utmost respect for everyone who has written and spoken, and this moment is messy, but this is the moment, and we can't ignore it. And we have a lot of hard conversations to have, and it's really a privilege to be in the room. Thank you.
And last on the list is Nassim Williams.
Just before I start, I didn't really prepare anything. That's like as beautiful and passionate as like all of you did, and this is just my thoughts. So first off, my name is Nassim Williams. I'm currently a senior at Ithaca High School, and before I want to say anything, living in Ithaca, I grew up in a racial hypocrisy that screamed at me that I'm not racist. With Black Lives Matter signs in the windows that replace black residents who can't afford to live there now. But I'm here today as an advocate for this young woman of color and every student in here, and every student of color. I myself identify as black and have noticed a lack of representation in every way in the school system except for sports, because that's all that's advertised for us. There's a need for more opportunities in academics and especially roles in the arts that don't depict POCs as typical stereotypes. It's a clear case of white fragility when your attempts are to justify an act of whitewashing before accepting it as whitewashing and attempting to change it. The students of colorblind class team discourage each attempt of student in color and maintain systematic racist practices and doesn't confront it at all whatsoever. Every student here wearing black is here because they care. They actually care about people of color and are choosing to do something about it. No matter how uncomfortable or how inconvenient it is for you sitting up there, we are here in your face with no fear in our hearts. The play, I'm glad it served as a vehicle to open a door to a bigger room we need to address. The higher powers in our school don't care about the issue, they just care about upholding the image of ICSD. After receiving a text from my mom, I was going to get interrogated for signing something that called out whitewashing. I looked at this district as a joke that I once held respect for. And if you're preaching true solidarity, then shut the play down. Being white, you benefit from the system of racism every single day. Breaking the structure is needed, not just labeling yourself progressive, because that doesn't protect you from being racist. Go to the roots and actually do something. Thank you.
That's the last of those who have signed up. Anyone else wish to speak? Stand and state your name.
Hi, my name is April Carroll. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I'm Maddie's sister, and I would like to say how proud I am of these students. This needed to get called out when I was in 6th grade. I did the musicals from 6th to 12th grade. I was in the musicals when I was 6th to 10th grade. I was bullied out of the musicals when I was in 10th grade, and I decided to stage manage. And let me tell you, stage managing, I'm with the directors and the choreographers, everybody 24/7. Those times there were not fun. I would come home crying constantly. I was so upset in myself, and I didn't know what I could call it. And these students are telling you how upset they are. They're letting you know how they feel and how uncomfortable it is to be surrounded by these people that don't understand what the problem is. Fine, people of color were cast. That's incredible. I'm so happy. The people of color that were cast as a criminal, as a sassy black girl. They were cast as one night a black woman would play Belle, the other night a white woman would play Belle. People would make jokes. Oh, when am I going to go and see Black Belle? When am I going to go and see White Belle? You know, there was constant racial conversation that wasn't happening. You want to cast these people of color in white roles? Fine, but you're not giving us the dialogue and the information that we need. In these rehearsals, we were never talking about how, like, in Catch Me If You Can, which was fantastic, Christian Henry was playing a criminal that was constantly being caught by the law. We never talked about how that affects how black men are being viewed in media. How Joelle Payne, a fantastic singer, was constantly being told to belt. Like, she has a fantastic voice. She could sing so many different things. She could have been a different role, but she was put in that role because she could sing, like, soulfully. Because she was being told that she needed to be this stereotypical black woman. I think that what these students are saying is so, so, so important, because it is time for ICSD to change, and it's time to start with this musical, and it should have started years and years and years ago. So you need to listen, and you actually need to take action, because if you don't, then this is going to be a huge thing that's going to be coming to you every week, I'm sure.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Cuevas, and I wasn't planning on speaking, but I'm a Latina. I was the little Dominican girl that Amon mentioned in his speech, and after that show, I never did theater again, and I love theater. Maybe it was because I felt really uncomfortable because I was never cast as a lead, even though I love to sing and I love to act. Maybe it was for other reasons, but now I'm looking at this and it really, really is a topic that needs to be spoken about. And I look at all my beautiful theater friends and people who I see every day, and I'm so, so proud of all of you, and Nasim and all the parents and everyone who spoke out. Like, that is just so amazing, and I'm very nervous, but I just think that I hope that all of you really took this in and listened, because I still haven't done theater. I love theater. My sister does it, and she would come home crying sometimes because she would think, I have this curly hair, like I don't fit this part, and I'm tan, and I don't sing well enough as the white girls, and those were thoughts that I had at her age, and that's why I don't do theater anymore. And if you guys, any of you saw the recent show Pippin, my sister was a lead in it, and she did amazing, just so good. And I sat there in the audience like, wow, like I wish that I was doing this, and I'm not. And I think that that's something that I hadn't thought about, but I am now thinking about, and I'm really happy. And I hope that all of you are thinking about. So thank you so much.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak. I was going to speak either. My name is Erica Cree. I'm the director of the Africana Library at Cornell University and coordinator of the Fine Arts and Music Library. I'm also a board member at Cinnanopolis and also the History Center. I'm speaking because I love you. Students, you are so brave, you are so courageous, you've taught me so much today. I want you to listen to what these students are saying, because I'm also a member of Black Lives Matter Ithaca, by the way, and we even talk among ourselves of how much we need to support these students, because they are our future. They're not our future, they are now. There is no future, we are in the present, and I just want to thank you for stepping forward and pointing out what's going on, because I've heard of the rumors for years what was going on, but you so eloquently tonight and earlier voiced what was going on, and want you to know you have my full support in any way you need. I'm there for you, and I'm hoping that you heard what these students are saying in your heart, and you do the right thing.
My name is Minton Fisher York. I actually currently do not go to Ithaca High School. I'm at a private school, but as someone who did attend at least 1 year at IHS and spent the rest of her previous academic life at in the Ithaca City School District, I would like to say something. For years, as a Korean American young woman, I have constantly felt out of place as a daughter to two white, delightful parents, and as a sister to another white brother, also mostly delightful. I have not had the courage thus far to make a statement in saying that I have constantly felt that I have been flying under the radar, that I have not been represented in my culture, my country from where I was born, and my ethnicity. My race has not been appropriately represented in many of the things that I see around Ithaca. And today I am making a stand with the fellow students at IHS to anyone who is willing to join our cause, and I am extremely thankful that this has been done today as something that I did not have the courage to do before by myself. I am now willing, and I am excited. I am also desperate to make a change in this community right now. So thank you.
Hi, just real quickly, I'm Shelley Nunn, and I'm very proud mother and grandmother of the Nunn clan. And really want to say, and I cannot speak as eloquently as you students have done. You've done a wonderful job expressing yourself. There's one thing I want to point out that I think is very important. I heard people comment about individuals and that they're not racist. And I never call anyone a racist, because I don't know what's in your heart or what your intentions are. But I think it's important to remember that doesn't matter. What matters is the impact of actions. And here tonight you have heard young people talk about the impact that this environment has had on their being, their self-esteem, although it's caused them to have such great resilience that they've overcome any unintentional attempt to mitigate them and have them not have a voice. So, I just reiterate, Does it matter? You know, don't call, you know, you can call someone, I don't call people racist. What I look at is what is the impact of what they are doing, and focus on that and change it.
And perhaps one or two more. We do need to get the board responses. The superintendent needs to respond, and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Emma Ellis. For those of you that don't know, I am the white woman that was asking for yeah, I didn't know how I was going to feel coming here tonight. It's a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much for sharing. My world has been opened, and my heart has been too. When the letters first came out, I have to say, because of my ignorance, because of my privilege, I did not understand what the problem was. I was like, why are you attacking my role in my show, you know? And that's not okay. And, you know, I'm now caught in this position where theater is my passion. It's my career. Literally, I'm going to go into musical theater. Yeah, and, you know, I'm sorry, I'm really nervous.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I had a rough week because I didn't know, you know, obviously I want to support my friends. I want to support this cause. It's very real. It's very prominent, and it's something that we totally should be fighting. But at the same time, I'm thinking, you know, I look forward to this every single year. I have never personally had a bad experience with the casting team, and, you know, obviously people have, and everyone has their own whatever. And not to denounce that in any way. So, and I'm still pretty torn, but I think, you know, and just to say that I don't know what the next step is. And I don't want to begin to know what the next step is. And especially being a white woman, I don't want to be in charge of that decision because it's not my place. What I do know is that this issue should have been addressed a long time ago. And even setting aside the race, y'all, Hunchback has one female part. So even if you put the race thing aside, which you shouldn't, but, you know, the race, there's 3 like strictly guy parts, 1 give or take part, and 1 female part. The ratio of males to females in musical theater in high school, in elementary school, in middle school, in college, in the theater world is and so if you're going to pick a show with 1 female part, already that's going to pit people against each other. I had one of my very close friends come up to me crying after they announced the show because she said, I don't want to be in a bloodbath with you because I treasure our friendship, but this is going to pit us against each other. And I felt the exact same way. And then you add the race factor in, and it's just like, I mean, y'all should have addressed this. And yeah, like I don't know how to move on from here, and like I said, it's not my place to decide, but I would like there to be some action made, because my dad spoke, and it's true, like, you know, I have my AP Bio midterm tomorrow, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and I gotta go home and study for that, and I need to eat dinner, and like, you know, as much as I support 100% people sharing their opinions, sharing their needs, sharing their stories, you know, we are students. We have school, which determines our future, like it or not. You know, hate math or love math. We got to do our math homework. And, you know, as much as we need to speak to these issues, this cannot consume our lives. And so, this is when I speak to you in that we would really just like to hear something soon so we can be a little bit more at ease and focus a little bit harder on stuff that is going to affect our futures. So thank you.
2 more and that's it.
Good evening, I'll be brief. My name is Jamila Wally Adams. I'm an educator here in this community, and I just want to give a shout out to our students that are here. I'm here in support of all of you, and I just want to make mention that when we're intentional about unpacking our bias like these students have, this is what education and empowerment looks like.
Hi everybody, my name is Fabina, and I am a mother of two amazing young daughters that are currently attending the Layman Alternative Community School. And while I have to say that that was my school of preference for my daughters to attend, I will say that I'm very honored to just see amazing leadership, and this is what leadership should look like. And I'm very honored to see elders being in this room in support of this new leadership that is taking some bold action that we should all be supporting. And while we're focusing on Ithaca High School, I just want to make it clear, I also did graduate from the Ithaca City School District, that this is not an issue that exists just in Ithaca High School. This is an issue that is school district-wide. This is a national issue, and this is an opportunity for us to take responsibility and start making some different types of actions that are going to create the different types of results that we keep saying that we want. So I really just want to say that what I have heard a lot of, and I will say that I have participated in the Equity and Inclusion Leadership Committee. For those of you that don't know, it's supposed to be a group of community members along with ICSD administrators and teachers to work collectively around issues of equity. And I will say that it has been discouraging. I'm going to speak very frankly in terms of the amount of progress that has been made around equity. I no longer participate actively in it, but it's just disheartening to see that we are still moving really slowly in this progress. Why? What I keep hearing is like, well, the state standards and the policy this and the policy that, like policies have been built on white supremacy and a history of systemic racism. So either we continue to use these as barriers to actual change, or we start developing our own policies, and then we can say ICSD is on a map in the United States.
That's right.
We'll do one more student.
Hi, my name.
And last, but students, if students want to speak, fine. We'll listen to students, but then we will move on. Go ahead.
Well, I promise I won't take too long. My name is Enrique de Lemos. I'm a senior at Ithaca High School, and I am Brazilian. And I don't know if you're familiar with Brazilian culture, but there was a very prominent soccer player that's important in our history named Pelé. He is an African Brazilian soccer player who was able to withstand all the racism against him that FIFA threw against him, that other players from other countries threw against him, and became a world champion 3 times. A very proud moment in our history. So if I was going to make a movie about him, why would I ever cast someone who is not of his color, who has never been what he went through, who has never experienced anything? So my point being is that until this is fixed, the student body will pester you and will bother you until there is change. That is a fact. And we're here and we'll be here until necessary. Yep. That's all I want to
say. One more student.
Hi, I'm not really a performer. I do tech for the musicals. Needless to say, I'm not going to do tech this year. I am a woman of color. I'm half Indian. And I just want to say that I admire your bravery, but also, why did we even choose to do Hunchback of Notre Dame in the first place? A, it's an extremely racist depiction of the Romani people, the Disney version, and the Victor Hugo novel. B, it has an extremely ableist perspective, and it's extremely harmful to people with autism, and it's been known to do that and be extremely offensive. And C, it literally has a woman being assaulted on stage. Like, why would we choose this in a wake when we have this extreme institutional racism, when we live in an ableist country, when we have the Me Too movement happening? And it bothers me that you went through so many stages, not you necessarily, but that that just theater department went through so many stages in the process of realizing that this could be an issue. And I think it's deeply problematic, and we need to address that issue, both of racism and sexism, and just like consider these aspects when you're choosing your musical. Yeah.
I consider that the collective view. I wish I selected the musical, but I don't do that. Board responses at this time. And we will hear from the superintendent. So, whoever wishes to go first. Moira, go ahead.
I got to collect myself here for a minute.
I just want to say that I've been on the school board for 2.5 years. This is the most difficult board meeting I've ever attended, but it also, in some ways, has been the most rewarding and energizing board meeting I've ever attended. Over the past week, since this issue has come out in the press, and I've read and had conversations with the superintendent, I had a very, very enlightening conversation with my husband, who in the late 1960s was very active in his high school theater program, and where he was a black male in a very predominantly white high school, but had several leads in his high school productions, and this is 50 years ago. And this issue led us to have a really wonderful conversation about a lot of issues in his life and in our shared life and in the life of our community. So I've gone through a lot of emotions as I've been reading and talking about this. Sadness, pain, gratitude, hope. All of these have been intensified this evening. And at this moment, they're something of a swirl. But I just want to say a little bit about each one of them. You know, I felt deep sadness just in reading what I've read in the paper about the pain that so many people have experienced in relation to this issue, and over time in relation to the larger issue, and that certainly has been intensified this evening. Sadness, and then pain, hearing about that pain, and tonight, you know, sharing it at a much deeper level, feeling it, internalizing it at a much deeper level has happened for me. I have felt gratitude, even before this evening, that this issue has been brought into the foreground, because it is so clear that change needs to happen. Before change can happen, we need to have conversations and dialogue and share perspectives and share strategies. And that gratitude has been really intensified this evening because I've heard so much that has been food for thought for me, and I know it has been for others because I've heard that from you. And that gratitude has led to hope, and I felt it before the meeting tonight. At times during this meeting, my hope was really being undermined, I'll say. And then at other times, it was soaring. I think at this moment, hope is rising. And I hope to keep hope rising for me personally and for others by a commitment to continue dialogue and to insist upon change. There were a number of things that I heard tonight that were news to me and has led me to feel like, particularly about some that are very recent events, that I need to know more about them. I need to ask questions, and particularly about some things I've heard that I didn't know about that I feel as a board member I should have known about. I had some ideas before coming into this meeting about what immediate steps should happen in regards to the Hunchback and the play. And right now, I'm not sure. One of the first speakers, Cynthia Henderson, her point about that the decision should not be made by adults for the children, and that really spoke to me. But I heard a lot of other things too. And I have to say, at this moment, and I'm feeling very emotional about the whole thing, I just really don't know. And, you know, maybe I'll hear some more tonight. The board may want to reconvene or in some way have a conversation so that I individually and we collectively can come to some consensus. But again, I have to say, you know, one of my profound emotions at this moment is incredible gratitude to, and as somebody said late, I think it was, I don't know, I took a lot of notes to try to keep this, but you know, somebody said it's a privilege to have been part of this conversation. And as difficult as it was at times, you know, particularly, I have to say, it's very hard to hear, you know, sweeping statements about us not caring. That's very hard to hear. And, you know, there are times that I would have liked to run out of the room. But, you know, ultimately, I'm very, very grateful to have been part of this and looking forward to the very difficult work ahead of us, but feeling very much personally committed. And I believe my fellow board members all feel the same way, to insisting upon action steps that will bring about the kind of change that so many people spoke so eloquently about. Thank you.
Board members don't have time limits, but we'll go.
Did I go over 3 minutes?
We can talk as long as we want. Who wants next? Patty.
I will make some remarks. I have been a parent in this school district for going on 25 years, and I've been on the board for 7.5 years now. And I know that every member of this board, and this doesn't always happen in school boards, every member of this board joined the board to make things better for students. And not just students from a couple of elementary schools, but all students. And these guide our conversations all the time. How to make things better. I want to say that I was unaware of the magnitude of this issue, and this is obviously much more of an issue than one casting in one play. I heard I was not a theater parent. My kids went to Boynton. One was involved a little bit. It was not her thing, which is fine. But this is one of the things that I've learned over the years as a parent, and one of the reasons that I wanted to serve as a board member with Dr. Brown is that he came in committed to improving the experience for all children, and supporting diversity, as so many of you have said, is important for all children. It's important for every kid to see that people of all backgrounds, and not just racial, socioeconomic, that's a huge issue that goes along with theater and music, because camps and instruments cost money, and we have a fine arts booster group, but there are a lot of people with more privilege and more resources than certainly my kids ever had, and my kids weren't badly off. And one of the places that Dr. Brown put as a priority when he came in, before I was on the board, was extracurriculars. He said he wants every child involved in extracurriculars in this district, because at the end of it, that's what you remember about school and what you love. It's not, oh boy, well, sometimes you do. You remember good teachers and good classes, but it's not, it's, wow, I was part of this group or that group. And my daughter, who was on the robotics team, which was like mostly male and really white, said, you know, it doesn't matter what kids love. Just support, Mom, just support whatever they love. And what I heard tonight was kids who love theater and it's caused you pain. It's caused you real pain. And that is not a person's fault, one person. It is something that we absolutely have to take a look at, not just take a look at. I have always wanted to see more support of more activities for more kids from more backgrounds sooner rather than later, not when you get to the high school. It should be fun for kids and not exclusive. I don't know enough about the current theater program to comment more on that. I've been away from it for a few years. I took all of your comments to heart, and like Maura, heard a lot of things that I would like to see this district work through and improve and do the hard work and commit to. I would also like to say, as Rob said, the board doesn't choose the plays, and the board is not informed of the plays, and the board doesn't approve of the plays. That's not our role. Our role, though, is to listen to what you have brought to the forefront. And I thank you, each and every one of you, for the heartfelt comments you've made. I thank parents and community members. And I very much appreciate and mourn for the dilemma that current students in the play are faced with. I'll give it up to somebody else.
So Ann first.
Well, I just want to thank you all for coming and also for expressing so eloquently and such important issues. And I think one of the things that's really wonderful is that you brought a lot of really important issues to light and explained them very clearly and brought a lot of things that I was not really aware of. But one thing I want to say that I think is really important is we're all kind of standing behind this table and it all feels like very formal and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's important that it doesn't become like an us versus them, and you know, and I think that it's more important that we work the issues out in terms of dialogue and constructive ways. And that we think not only of the whole issue and the deeper issues and the structural issues and really commit to working on those. And at the same time, I think there's people involved that were chosen to be in that play, and I think it's important to consider how those people and those families and that community and how that's important as well. And I think one of the things about this and about dealing with this within an educational institution such as ours and in a district that's really committed to doing the right thing is that this gives us an amazing opportunity to really think about it. I'd like to, your comments, Buddy, that you brought out, and it made me think about how you read those comments and you thought about them and you're processing them, and I really respect that kind of work that you're doing. And so I guess I feel that it's important as a board, and I'm committed to working on these issues in what way that we can. And I also think as well, there's probably a certain time pressure because the play is on the way. It's like already in progress. So I don't think this is an easy, I don't think there's just one single solution. And as I say, I think it's important to work as in terms of dialogue and to avoid kind of just really it feeling like this, instead of working at it in terms of conflict. So that would be my hope.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I have some other distinguished colleagues who I'm sure want to speak further than I do, so I'll be quick. I think what we heard tonight is this is messy, and it's complicated. And I heard someone early on say something about sides, and you were just mentioning this. I don't believe this is a binary thing. I think it is messy, and there's many ways to look at it. So I really don't want to look at it in a binary kind of way. And I hope you'll work with us on it. That as we move to make change, you got to work with us on it. There will be those who don't want to make change, and we'll need your support in doing that. It was interesting the comment about policy. Here I sit on the one board in the state of New York that's rewriting their whole policy manual, led by Dr. Eversley Bradwell. I actually went to your last policy committee meeting. I may come more often. If you want to participate in actually looking at policy, we're doing it line by line. Come join us. It's a great discussion. Now you're here. You've got a reason to be here, and you're learning that we're actually working on it too. So come look at that. As to the things tonight, Pat talked about the increase in opportunities, all the children participating in co-curriculars. That's been our goal. I think we need to increase the opportunities here in the theater area. We've talked about that. We need to move on that faster. One of the things I said, and my board colleagues have heard me say it, we need to change the canon. We can't be looking at the same 15 plays that every high school in the United States looks at. We need to change the canon, and we need to. I'm not going to lead that. I'm not a theater person. I enjoy theater, but that's not my thing. But I recognize that we're doing the same play that 400 other high schools are doing right now, and there have to be other options. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a musical. Maybe it's 3 one-act plays. Maybe, you all are the folks who can see what some of those options are and you might want to do. And then I heard one of the parents mention logistics. We get it. Transportation is a problem. Meals. If you're going to be rehearsing late, that's a problem. We get that. There's a lot of work going on the transportation side. I'm not sure we've worked as much on the meal side, but that's something that we could be looking at. Those are kind of 3 areas where I think we can be working. I appreciate y'all coming tonight.
I'm happy to go.
Sean, go ahead.
I'm going to try to get through this without being emotional. Something that Pat just said about being a parent. Our daughter went to school here, and I'm helping to raise our grandbaby and realizing that in a year she'll be back in the school district. And what does that mean to see this cycle repeat, especially as you feel like you've been someone who's been fighting against this cycle? I'm reminded, I should make mention that we find ourselves in indigenous land, and so when white folks first arrived, the very first black folks they brought were slaves. The first school began here, and that was in 1788. The first school began here in 1807, founded upon a system of white supremacy. And so we have 200 years of experience making that take place. Erica Cree said something that also moved me when he looked at the students and said that he loves you. That moves me. I see you. I hear you. And what I'll try to say, to be brief, is I'm committed to trying to dismantle all forms of supremacy: male supremacy, straight supremacy, white supremacy, strand by strand, moment by moment. It's not easy. It takes a good deal of time, but you have my commitment that we will continue to fight and make that happen.
That's the chair of our policy committee, folks.
Come help us write better policy.
Yeah.
What exactly does that invitation mean?
Just come by the committee. We publish our policy agendas at least a week in advance, that what we're working on, and we literally go through every policy line by line, trying to make sure that they aren't doing the same forms of exclusion and oppression that have been around for the past 200 years. Doesn't mean we always get it right, but that's the point. Yell at us.
Thank you.
We'll get it better.
The meetings are open. There's a schedule, but it's not on our board meeting night. It's on the opposite Tuesday nights. E, go ahead.
So I want to start by modeling for our students. as some other people said, we have had many people in these positions around the room giving us this kind of help. We've had employees, we've had teachers, we've had parents, we've had members of different unions, we've had contractors. Nothing has felt this real. Nothing has felt this good. I'm going to look at those students and thank you for kicking me in the ass. I appreciate you. I love you too. Prachi, you had me from the moment you first told me the story around Ella's table. I have poked you, I admit. It was to get information. It was to gather information in the most forthright way I could. And believe me, I have brought your story to these halls of power. I apologize to you as a collective for making you feel like I was talking down to you on MLK Day. You're not the problem, you're the solution. Right? One of the issues here is that we haven't listened to your voice. One of the issues here is how we've constructed this program. Right? The structural nature of this program has one individual with a great amount of power. Right? That's part of the angst, that's part of the fear, it's part of the agitation that you were feeling in those meetings, right? We need to shift that. Your voices matter. At LACS, we've already created a model that's much different from this. The students are primarily engaged in working out the plays, right? The adults there know what their role is. Their role is to facilitate excellence on behalf of those kids. Our model is slightly different. I don't want to sit here and pretend that I want to defend myself. Almost everyone who's spoken at that table, almost everyone in this room knows my heart, they know my work. There have been a lot of things that have happened over the last 10 years that bring us to a point where we can actually have this conversation. Where we could hear you and we could actually execute change on your behalf that's significant. I want to point out what Shelley said. She's sitting here with 3 generations of students in this room, right? Nia has been, I've watched her grow up in this community. What she has done with the program that she runs is the most excellent form of inclusion that I think any of us have ever seen, right? We need that energy, we need that expertise within the school district. We need your voices within the school district. To their parents, I'm going to tell you too, I poked them. And I apologize to you if it seemed like that was outside of my role, or that I might have somehow been causing them further damage. As Sean said, the babies I raised graduated in 1999, in 2000. We've been at this a long time, right? This is a moment of opportunity. This is a moment of transformation opportunity. Let me tell you what I don't want to hear anymore going forward. Let me tell you what really upsets me about this situation. Beyond the things that we've talked about, choosing to play that had limited options that put us in a corner, right? A particular type of casting, a particular set of decisions. Here's what upsets me. Here's what I want to stop tonight. Here's what I'm not going to accept moving forward. What we heard was not, we know this is difficult. Who can help us make these decisions? It was not, we're about to go in some spaces that I'm uncomfortable with. Who in the community can I reach out to support me in doing this? Right? What we heard was, this is how we do it, because this is what we've done. And alternatively, what we heard was, it never occurred to me that. Right? Never occurred to me that this outcome was possible. There is a timeline here of events that I will spare you. But the superintendent and I were having conversations about this issue almost from the moment it was dropped on. We have structures, we have ways of doing things. We put those ways in the hands of the people who are obligated to work these issues out. We now realize, all of us, we have some more work to do. To you students who sat here and said that this is something you love and we've hurt you, to the students who said this is something you cherish and you dropped out of it because you didn't feel supported, right? Amon said in the meeting, to my face, yo, my brothers have to look on the stage. And when they see me playing certain roles, how do you think that makes me feel? How do you think that makes them feel? Right? Everything you're hearing tonight is authentic. And my role is different here on this esteemed group than it would have been 12, 15 years ago when I was in your seats, throwing Molotov cocktails over the wall to see who we could hit because we were damaging children. We clearly are not where we need to be. We clearly have worked hard to prepare the room for this conversation. What did Dr. Brown start us off with this year when he had all of the collected faculty members together? This is a year of difficult conversations. This is a year for conflict, right? So I'm going to end by thanking the students again for bringing this to us. Not easy, not simple, not clean. We just got to grow the hell up and do it.
Nicole, do you wish? Go ahead.
I want to first say thank you all for coming today. I admire your bravery, your heart, your courage. I'm feeling all kinds of emotions, so I'm honestly trying to reflect and be as honest and accountable as I can be. I think first off, I'm going to make I statements and say I personally, as board member, as I believe Rob has said, we don't know the specific dealings that go on in the school in terms of plays, whose specific roles are this and that, but I will say I feel like I have personally failed you, and I want to be held accountable for whatever impact, as Shelley brought up, in terms of that has on you, because we all know well-intentioned good people, but it's about impact. There's a difference between intent and impact. And I think if we're talking about Christian, who made a really great point about we can't just talk about one person because this is a huge systemic thing. If we want to talk about our district is probably over 90% white. So if we're talking about systemic and structural changes that need to happen, we first have to acknowledge that we are within a system or district filled with white people that are uncomfortable talking about race and racism. If they're uncomfortable talking about race and racism, there's no way that they can support students of color in the ways that they need. It's impossible for them to be able to encourage white students to support other students of color. So I first think that we have to talk about the structure as it is and think about the ways in which it needs to be, and that means doing more than having uncomfortable conversations, because I think there's so many people in this room that are tired of talking. We talk a lot. Yes. We need to stop the talking. We need to top the circles, the book clubs, and actually talk about the work that needs to happen. And as many people said, it's messy, it's painful. Many people in this room have grown up in households that never talked about race because that wasn't something that they were taught to do. And I think that's real, and I think it's real that we need to meet people where they are. We also need to have expectations. We also need people to rise to those expectations, because as someone who's placed in a position of power, things are expected of me as a parent, as a community member, as a friend, and it would be a disservice to say, we're going to think about or create another committee, because there's so many committees working on the same thing. So I think there's so many complex issues at play here. I think we also have to acknowledge that theater is historically a white thing. So when we're talking about access and the reasons why people of color are not in theater, not just at ICSD, but nationally, it's not a place where we typically see ourselves. So I think ICSD, we can do a better job at creating plays where students feel represented. And when I read your article, I felt pain when you talked about being excited that you finally saw a script that you saw yourself in. And to rip that and take that away from you, or to feel like that happened, was painful for me to read. So, yeah, I think we can all do better, and I think everyone at this table wants to do better. And it's hard and it's messy, and we don't want to hurt anybody, but we also have to acknowledge that there are people that are hurting daily, on a daily basis, every day when they walk into this building. And if we have to hurt some white students by having a conversation about what privilege means, regardless if you're from a rural area, if you're from Cuba Heights, that needs to happen. We need to have a class on whiteness. We need to have a class very real that we do have state and federal policies that we have to abide by. So I think we continue to need those kicks in the butt, because I think it's very easy to lose sight and for our eyes to drop off the prize for a second, because many of us are in the daily grind of doing all the things from shuffling kids to studying for exams because we all have to go to bed. But I know that we can do better, and I feel very encouraged to live here. I grew up in Harlem, and I've hated it ever since I've come here to Ithaca College, but it's inspired me to see all of you up here, that my kids could possibly be in a space where they feel empowered to speak their truth, and to have people like Nia that you can call on speed dial to come down and to advocate for you. So thank you.
Dr. Brown, I ran out of water a long time ago, and I'm going to lose my voice. I should speak since I am the only board member that actually went to the high school, and a long time ago. I was not well, back in the day, band geek or in the theater. I was a jock. Certainly love football, but it certainly caused me pain as well. So I understand. I'm not at all surprised by the talent, the ability of the students to speak. You're much like the kids I went to school with a long time ago. I first got on the board 11 years ago as a farm kid from Enfield because I did not like what I saw, did not like where the district was a decade ago. We've done a lot of work. We've come a fairly good distance, but Dr. Brown and I talk all the time. We're not done yet, and so there's much that we have to do. And Dr. Brown, you're going to go ahead and
thanks for the opportunity to talk. I have a lot on my heart. I feel blessed to raise my children in this community. My son is going to get a chance to be in class next to him. My daughter will get a chance to look at you young ladies as examples of what to be. My daughter sees me as she's done every day. So I'm blessed to raise my babies here. I came to my community back in late August, early September, in a vulnerable place as the leader of this organization, saying that I felt like a first-day educator. On the heels of all the fancy awards and all that stuff, this summer, mid-August, I went home and my mom and daddy looked at me in tears. And they said, nothing you've done has made a difference, nor has what we've done made a big difference. They've been fighting this fight for 60-plus years in the Jim Crow South and had done a lot of amazing things in that community. And they looked at me in mid-August as white supremacists were tearing apart our town and tearing down all the structures and systems we thought we had built. And they looked at their son, this fancy, internationally recognized educator in charge of one of the best school districts in the country, and asked him why school. And I had no answer for them. Because the folks who were doing that to our town while I was watching were all high school graduates and college graduates and business owners. And so then I also reflected as I was looking at my babies who's going to grow up in this amazing place that I've chosen to spend my life as long as y'all have me. I recognized from my understanding of institutional racism, classism, and sexism that I'm the leader of one of those organizations. Y'all know how vulnerable it is for a person in this role to stand up in front of everyone in the community and say, I lead an institutionally racist, classist, and sexist organization as a superintendent of the year? Because of my deep understanding of what that means, I'm able to say that. And I feel safe in this community that I'm living in and going to the grocery store with folks that you're going to support us in trying to dismantle it. I said that back in August, and for months I've been here thinking that nobody heard me, or no one had the courage to say something about it until tonight. And I should have known it was going to come from my baby. Because back then, I don't know if folks, I wrote about it, we've spoken all over the country about it, We've done blogs, we've done webcasts, we've done all kinds of stuff. We said it had to start with self-reflection, that we as a community need to self-reflect on how we've all contributed to institutionally racist classes and sexist organizations, and how we all have our prejudices, and we all have blind spots. And I push folks to self-reflect and be humble to actually do some research and read about what is a blind spot. What is institutional racism? That starts with self-reflection. But then I said, you know, to do this work, we need to all engage in loving conflict. Conflict that's forgiving. That, you know, we're going to recognize we're going to get angry with one another, but we can also go play ball after that. We can go break bread later too. We have folks to be in a conflict. We can have conflict that's trustful, caring, and kind, but we have to have some conversations that have never occurred in public education. Oh, and then I said, after doing those two things, we need to then talk about policy. Because from my studies, and this guy wrote the best dissertation I've ever read, and he talks about institutional racism, and you only change that through policy. For the folks who know what it looks like and feels like and how to take it down. So I said, after self-reflecting, engaging in hard conversations, we then need to change policies. And we have policies on the books here in this organization that have been on the books since the Jim Crow South era. And we wonder why we have achievement gaps. We wonder why we have just institutional racism and classism and sexism. But how many folks show up to these policy meetings? How many folks question us about how we're looking at policies from a culturally responsive and inclusive perspective? So, performing arts will never be the same in this district. Nor will water. Nor will any other system, and there are hundreds of them every day that we uncover that are broken or wrong or racist or classist. They'll never be the same once we have hard conversations about them because of the folks who are here who are open to changing those systems. We'll put a statement out. There will be some action. I promise you. Hold me accountable for that. In addition to a ton of resources that this board has already committed to us providing additional opportunities. If folks are saying they want to do extra plays, you got your chance now. I hope people are serious about that because we're going to be calling you. We're going to have so many opportunities. We're going to have plenty of opportunities. Resources won't be the issue. But there are other harder conversations that we got to have too. Performing arts will never be the same here. And you're here, and you know, I'm in that position in this role where I can't win right now. There's so much on my heart and mind that I want to say that I can't. There's so many things I want to do and I can't. It takes time. My mom and dad had fought this fight for 60 plus years, and they looked at me in August and said they hadn't done a damn thing. So I'm asking for y'all to give me a couple of weeks even, for the folks who are waiting for that response, as we're trying to tackle everything from contracts. I heard y'all talk contracts, to people, to blind spots, to policy. This takes time, but we will do something. I promise you. But here's my challenge to you, as I'm losing hair over this and every other issue. Be back here when we talk about code of conduct. Be back here when we talk about curriculum adoption. Be back here and talk about when we're talking about athletic programs, or reading programs, or inclusive practices, or culturally responsive teaching practices. Don't let it be about who's getting the lead in the play. The only issue y'all come out for. We sitting here, I've been in here 8 years, and this is the most people we've ever had at a board meeting. And we've uncovered some of the toughest issues in public education than any other district in the country, more than any other district in the country. And sometimes we have 2 people show up. So if y'all serious about the work, what you saying you are, let's pack this room every other Tuesday night as we take on complex issues and systems and structures. And when I ask for your support, as I'm in this vulnerable position, trying to change these policies. Because at the end of the day, everybody up here loves babies as much or more than you do. And we're trying to do right by them every day. And I've been struggling the last couple of weeks because I know if we made a decision to cancel play or do something, we're going to hurt somebody's child. And I've been put in a position where no matter what decision I make, somebody's going to be hurt. So I'm asking for your patience and your trust that I'll do the right thing. And with that, if I can take my last 30 seconds and give it to this young man who's had his hand up so long. And I know he's got to go to class more. If he can take and be the last word for me, and I'll channel it through you. Go for it, bud.
I just want to say I'm a kid, so I like to watch movies. And like a few weeks ago, me and my grandma and my little brother went to see a movie. It was Jumanji, and it was hilarious. But me and my grandma first noticed a big thing in that movie was the one black kid played football and he needed help with his homework. So he got the white kid to do it for him behind everybody's back. And then they got in trouble for that. They made the one black kid struggle with his homework. And all the other kids were perfectly fine. I just find that dumb. And yeah, I think that's...
Thank you, Cort.
Tell me your name.
I'm Rowan.
Rowan.
I was the only football player in the room. I feel you. I understand. Come on, man. Give me a break. We need to stand up. We do have some mundane issues to deal with. I'm going to have to stand up and get a bottle of water. We're not going to discuss this anymore tonight. We as a board with the superintendent, we're going to have an opportunity to talk about this. I think an opportunity for kids to go home, do what you need to do. Really, we're just going to do consent agenda and then move on and close out our meeting. But I need to stand up. Good?
I'll move the consent as presented.
Second. Okay, it's Pat's.
Moira can have it.
Is Jennifer? Oh, Jennifer's here.
Jennifer's here.
Jennifer's here.
Anything we need to speak to?
There were some gifts from IPEI, a couple of other smaller gifts.
Tax warrant, and please.
Tax warrant.
And.
Come on.
Thank you. And the tax warrant is being sent around, it will be need to be signed again.
The bids for Caroline were there. For the entrance at Caroline, it's about $20,000 under the budgeted amount.
Right.
So we're accepting those tonight.
Okay. All right.
This is the consent?
Yeah. And the bids were pushed out to everyone, so you should.
It's $20,000 under the budget.
Right, so good. And
that doesn't always happen.
okay. So, without further ado, move seconded, all in favor? That is everyone. Nicole is.
I'll move we dispense with the
Yes.
committee reports.
We'll do that another time. We're going to do, Brad Pollock will come back for Cuba Heights at another time. Dr. Brown, you've spoken tonight. You're good?
Good.
Yes. Signing the tax warrant again. So then there's a letter regarding to the Charter School Institute.
Amanda, would you close that door? Would I leave one open?
It's all right, it's fine.
Because the noise, I don't know, the noise was coming from outside.
They're making their way out.
Okay.
But we're all right.
All right.
I'll move to approve the letter to the State University of New York Charter School Institute in opposition to New York's charter revision request for a middle school and authorizing the president of the board to execute on behalf of the ICSD Board of Education.
And I will second that.
And move seconded, any discussion we wish to engage?
I just want to thank Ann for leading the investigative effort into this issue and doing enough fact-finding to make this a meaningful response.
So,
seconded that motion.
and that we're going to thank Kate for pulling it all together. But just an overview of the letter so we know what we're doing and its purpose, just to review. So what we're asking right now with this resolution is permission to actually complete and finalize this letter and have the permission to submit this letter to the Charter School Institute. And the intention is particularly not, the intention of this is specifically for its enlargement. It's the choice or the desire of New Roots to expand. So this is specifically about its desire to expand in the middle school. So I don't know if most people had a chance to read it?
Yes.
Sean, there were a couple of minor tweaks at the committee meeting this afternoon from what you saw in Dropbox. Word was
Is what we
missing.
haven't, oh, sorry.
This is what was changed. There was
Right.
a word missing. It was that kind. It wasn't a
grammatical type stuff.
There was no substantive change made. It was
It was the line on the first page to clarify that it was the opposition to the expansion.
right. We
Right.
did the last sentence in the first paragraph was added to clarify.
The other thing that's not on this is there will be addendums, like certain charts that go along with footnotes that have the actual data to support the information that is inside.
Any other questions? Comments?
I'm sorry, Ann. Does that mean, are these footnotes all inclusive, right? So no attachments to this? You're directing them to.
There'll be some charts.
There'll be some charts.
There'll be
There's
some
the
charts.
underlying data that's referenced is in charts that are going to be attached as summaries, but we're verifying that with the business office.
Got it, that's
with
what I
them to make sure that the figures are completely up to date.
That's right. And checking the work.
Twice. I just want to make sure we get those as soon as possible so we can have a complete set of thoughts on this ourselves.
Anything else? It's been moved, seconded. All in favor? That would be Pat, Rob, Moira, Eldred, Brad, Ann, and Nicole. Those opposed would be Sean. Motion carries, and the letter will be signed by myself and sent along to the CSI within the time frame that we need to adhere to. Resolution to approve, what do we mean? It's resolution to approve BOE legislative visits for tomorrow.
So moved.
Dang.
It's on back. It's on back. It's not. We're not staying overnight.
Yeah.
And in fact, depending on how this goes, we may decide not to go to the February one.
You would approve that previously,
Previously.
since we're getting, you can see we've got some good meetings tomorrow. It may not be worth the trip up a second time.
Yep. Yep. Excellent. So move seconded, all in favor, that's everyone.
Who seconded it?
Moira.
I did.
No, absolutely.
We're covering lunch.
You guys are going to roll early in the morning, and to that effect, any other business that we need to deal with tonight? Dr. Brown, anyone? We will have further discussions regarding a variety of issues shortly, soon, and we'll.
Ironically, I will mention, as we talk about diversity and inclusion, the centerfold of this.
I saw that.
The
Centerfold for February.
would be Sean Evelyn Bradwell and his wife, in an old picture of me, talking about these very complex issues and the need to have conversations about these very complex issues.
So as the Sports Illustrated cover jinx, right? Is that what we're talking about?
It was going to be part of my superintendent comment, but I figured it wouldn't be a good
Right, statewide recognition.
Yeah, I had it here. I was going to roll it out and show it, but
Time to pay some dues, Doc. Pay some dues, Doc.
I just have one question, not related to that, but related to back to the letter. We had talked earlier about sending this letter to other superintendents and that are impacted. Is that something we still want to do?
yeah, we should. I gave them a heads up.
No, there you go. Good. So, you good, Sean? Anything?
Yeah, I'll process. Yeah, I'm okay.
We have much to digest tonight. So, outstanding opportunity to hear from the community. Always, we don't shy from that. That's certainly, it's always good.
I guess it's good to say. I'll be working. We'll start a draft of a statement that speaks to some action steps and what we plan to do. And I talked to folks about it. It may take us a few days. Then I've asked for their patience. And I'll be sharing with you. We'll talk through it, and then we'll put something out.
Just to pick up on taking a few days, is one of the people on their way out the door is like, 2 weeks, don't wait 2 weeks, because the longer they work on that play, the harder it would be to change. So,
Yeah, we are. We're talking to some kids right now. So
Yeah.
this thing is going to be out.
Okay.
And, I should say that we need to have more conversation. So if we need to get together to have a conversation, we can do that as long as we let the folks, everyone know that we're going to have a conversation more than 24 hours in advance. So if there is a time that, over the next period of time, whether it's this week, next week.
Next Tuesday is an audit meeting.
Well, that's
riveting.
There's other. So let's. I think we probably need to come up with a time to have a dedicated discussion.
What time is the audit meeting?
At 5:30. 5:30 audit.
And how long do they typically last?
It's January. It's quick.
It's quick.
Yeah, this is probably the shortest one of the year.
So
we
could we
initially planned to do
possibly
it
have
about
it
session.
after that? Just a possibility? Sure. Or if we're going to
Send
do
around
it
a
sooner, any possibility for Thursday?
It's the open Tuesday, because there's,
Right.
January's a long month, so
Right.
we don't have any work sessions for next Tuesday. But again,
Question, though,
that's
is-
a week from now.
Are we thinking that there wouldn't be a statement out until next Tuesday? Because that seems too long. for me
Yeah,
to
it
wait.
does seem too long.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Sooner?
what other options?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a better option or other options. I'm just saying, I don't know if waiting for a full
Yes.
week to respond is.
Yeah,
No, not once it's all in motion, then it's
No.
almost no decision.
We may have to do it over email. Can we do that, or is that?
I'm not sure what you're saying. We should say something like, "We heard you. We really, really heard you."
No, well, for one thing, a decision needs to be made on the play and a statement
Before
in
2 weeks. That's what-
before next Tuesday, I think.
Yeah.
By the end of the week.
I would think by the end of the week, and I could be available
Tuesday because it's-
tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, but.
Is this something that the board has to approve if Dr. Brown works it through with people from fine arts?
Been here for 10 years, never approved a play.
No, but I was sensing earlier that you wanted our input on the decision to,
Yes, I would like some additional conversation with you.
Yeah.
Now, a statement, I was getting a sense tonight that we wanted to put out just a statement about what we heard tonight, a board response.
right.
And it could be the same thing that we already responded with, but that will take some time to craft, and then.
Is there any chance we could do a lunch meeting? I know it may be difficult for some folks, so I'm not trying.
It would be close to impossible for me for the next month.
Understood. Understood.
I don't have to be here for it.
I can't do tomorrow, but other days are.
Well, 3 of us are on the road tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right, obviously we can't do it tomorrow,
it's-
so.
But that's
I could
okay.
certainly
We
do-
need to let this percolate a bit, but not for very long.
Right.
Can't
Well,
do,
I mean,
tomorrow's not a day,
Or
so.
even like a
There-
9 a.m.
I'm available Thursday or Friday.
A decision about a play can be made without us coming together.
Okay.
But a statement that we're gonna craft that speaks to the decision and some next steps. I think it's okay to have us finalize something like that next week and put it out publicly next week. But a decision about whether or not we're gonna go forward or not will be made this week. And I hoping that the board is giving me that latitude to make that decision.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we will do so in that. And I will be in conversation with you, as you know, about every other thing too, but I'll be in conversation with each one of you individually and over the next few days, and we'll make a decision.
Yes.
I'm okay with that,
I'm okay.
as long as we as a board can commit that by Wednesday morning, something will be out, or even Tuesday evening after that meeting, something will be out.
A statement.
Yes.
That we're working
Week
on.
from today.
Yeah, a week from today.
For Wednesday.
Yep.
Whatever.
Yeah,
If we're committing to that and not, well, we need a couple more days to.
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I would ask that we come together on Tuesday evening to finalize that. And
Okay.
I'm here
Yeah.
Tuesday anyway for audit, so that's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
And I just want to, because we're not going to be here, who knows, we'll be, Wednesday, I just want to say 2 things that I expected the kids to say, but they didn't say this. If you haven't heard it 1,000 times, let me say it one more time. The timing of this almost seems, I've heard in the community, that these kids waited, right, for this moment so they could interrupt the play. Right? That's not their intention. They were prepared with these letters a long time ago, right? And I almost single-handedly tried to hold them off, thinking that we could come to a resolution, that we could work something out prior to this situation, where there's a time crunch. And that didn't happen. I mean, the Thanksgiving came, the holidays came, before you know it, it's January and we're talking about it. So I don't want anyone to penalize the kids for that, right? And one more time, I'll say that Prachi's comments to me, I don't know who else she said this to, but I know she said it to me almost from the first moment. From her, it's not about her getting this play, even though she is clearly personally pained because this is her identity, right? As she sees it. Her issue was broader than that there should have been 10 brown girls up there, right? So they could choose one who was suitably positioned to do this play. So I just want to say that to you guys because I firmly believe you have all the information now to make the best decision on behalf of everybody, but that's an important thing to say publicly, because we didn't get it out.
I'm not going to be here on Tuesday. It's my birthday, and I think you all know how I feel, and I've made that very clear to you all, so I don't need to be here next Tuesday to say that. But if we were to meet this weekend, I'll be in Florida.
We definitely know how you feel about your birthday that week.
Yeah, I thought so. That's what you were gonna say.
No, we'll channel that energy.
You want cake? Is that what you said?
She wants more than cake.
Jennifer, I want cake.
I went to work sessions on my birthday. I just want to point out for this. But Nicole, I applaud you for taking your
Last
birthday
year,
off.
we had a board meeting on my birthday.
Well, I only made plans because I thought it was a free.
That's right.
Absolutely.
But,
No, we're not. It's an audit.
so Dr. Brown, do you have what you need from us? So,
Anybody want to be in my position? Anybody want to
With your pay?
I don't want to be in your position, Dr. Brown, but I think you're in a position to demonstrate that.
Bow tie, bro. I'll make the decision. I just want the bow tie.
without objection, we're going to close up shop and go on to.
I guess I might have been right on the next agenda. Is that right?
Oh, boy.